Chapter 441 Burn Rune. 10 days passed. After Christmas, Yan Yi, who had that kind of relationship with Naruto, became a lot more open in the process of getting along with the two, but the time they spent together was still a little bit. Yi's family didn't know about Yan Yi and Naruto, and they still controlled her very strictly. However, because Makoto Ito and Taisuke Ziyang were in prison, everyone knew that Yan Yi was Naruto's girlfriend, and no one dared to harass Yan Yi for a while, although Yan Yi was also the dream lover of many boys in the school, but when they thought that Naruto was so powerful, they could only look up silently. Time passed slowly, it was winter in a blink of an eye, and soon it was time for the winter vacation. And this also means that Naruto is about to transfer. Yan Yi was the first to know about this matter, but she, who had already had a relationship with him, was very reluctant to give up on it, but she already firmly believed that she was a Naruto woman. Even if she was separated for a while, she couldn't erase the feelings between the two, although sad, but my heart is still full of hope. However, the world's reaction was a bit big. When Naruto told her about this, the whole world was stunned, and then the tears couldn't stop flowing. Because for her, although her relationship with Naruto is very good, neither of them have done that kind of thing yet. It can be said that everything is just a secret love of the world's wishful thinking. And Naruto's transfer meant that the world's secret love could not get results, which was unacceptable to her. In comparison, Otome is much more open-minded. She and Naruto have the same relationship as underground lovers. Although Naruto's departure made her feel very lost, Naruto promised to come to Kano City to see her every once in a while. It made her heart very sweet. As long as the two still maintain that kind of relationship, she is already very satisfied. In the evening, in the house, Naruto is holding a fine iron dagger, holding a carving knife and engraving runes on the dagger. This dagger, which he bought at the stall with money, is the best quality dagger he has ever seen on the market. Although a dagger of this level cannot be compared with the Hokage world, it is very important to Naruto. It's better than nothing. After all, in this modern society, with Naruto's existing strength, he basically does not need to fear any danger. He bought this dagger only because the liberation of chakra has reached a certain level recently, and he can activate the Hiraishin spell. For the sake of. At this time, he was also engraving the spacetime spell on the dagger. In theory, as long as chakra is enough to activate this technique, Naruto can use the technique to move in space. At present, after several months of hard work by Naruto, the chakra in the body has finally reached the amount that can be used once the Hiraishin technique. The technique of Hiraishin can use the rune engraved on the target to move for an instant when its own chakra is activated. The amount of chakra used depends on the specific situation. If it is too big or too strong, it will consume a little more chakra. The chakra liberated by Naruto himself is very small, but due to his familiarity with the technique of Hiraishin, even if the chakra that can be used in the body at this time is so small that even Shadow Clone cannot make it, he can still use this space ninjutsu. Although, after using it once, it cannot be used again for a short time, and it needs to be recovered and refined for chakra. But this was already a big surprise for Naruto. After a while, the rune was finally burned, and Naruto let out a slight sigh. With a flick of his arm, Kobo suddenly shot out from his hand and slammed into the door in front of him with a slam. Then, Naruto mobilized the chakra in his body and activated the spell. The next moment, Naruto, who was sitting in the center of the living room, appeared in front of the door in an instant. He gently pulled out Kuei, smiled bitterly and said to himself, although the chakra in the body can already activate Hiraishin once, but there is still a long way to go from completely unlocking chakra. Quote. Moreover, if this chakra is used for the technique of Hiraishin at one time, there is no remaining use for other aspects. He has done experiments before, and based on the amount of chakra that can be used in the body now, he can only emit a wind blade the size of a washbasin. Frowning, Naruto continued to sit down and practice chakra. Although this world has peace that the world of Hokage does not have, he will never give up the world of Hokage and enjoy it alone. No matter how cute the girl here is, he will always be thinking about waiting there. People. More than an hour later, Naruto's cell phone suddenly rang. He woke up from the meditation, picked up his mobile phone and opened it, only to find that it was a call from Moment, and his expression couldn't help but be stunned. Although Naruto's mobile phone has the number of the instant, but he has never called himself once at ordinary times. I don't know why he suddenly called himself this time. Naruto, where are you now? The Moment's voice was very soft, and Naruto was stunned and replied, I'm at home, what's wrong? Oh, can you come to school? School? It's getting dark now. It seems that the school is forbidden to go in and out. I'm at school. Naruto was stunned for a moment, then frowned slightly. Why are you still at school? Are you alone? Well, can you come over? Shanshin hummed and asked again. Hearing her voice seem to be in a bad mood, Naruto was worried that something would happen to her, and quickly responded. Okay, I'll come right away. After hanging up the phone, Naruto felt a little strange. As the leader of the class, in the eyes of others, although he was petite, he was very reliable. I don't know what happened this time, causing her to be so I'm still at school alone late, and I still ask myself to go there. Could it be that I'm in danger? Naruto was puzzled, put on his jacket and went out of the house, taking a taxi to Shino Academy. At this time, the sky outside had completely darkened, and the street was lit up with lights. It took Naruto half an hour to arrive at the gate of the academy, and found that the gate had been closed long ago. Helpless, he had to come to the courtyard wall behind the school, jumped over the wall from an unnoticed corner, and entered the school. Before taking a few steps, I saw a figure in a corner of the playground in front of me. It was that Moment. Chapter 442 Lost Night. Under the moonlight, the thin figure of the Moment was slightly thin. At this time, she was sitting on the swing in the corner of the playground with her head lowered. The two slender legs in black cotton socks were shaking slightly. Naruto stepped forward and called her. Shinin, why are you still here at this time? Suddenly slightly startled, he turned his head and saw Naruto's figure. His face couldn't help showing a look of joy again, and hurriedly stood up. Naruto, you came so fast. Frowned as she watched her Yuhi's nose froze in the cold wind. Now that the school is closed, do you want to be frozen here alone at night? I just don't want to go home. She lowered her head slightly, a look of loneliness flashed across her face, and hearing the concern in Naruto's tone, she felt happy again. What's the matter? Why don't you want to go home? Naruto took off his coat and put it on her, took her to sit on the swing, and asked softly. In an instant, his body shook slightly, and he glanced at Naruto in a complicated way, and asked faintly, how many days can there be like this? Naruto, why do you think there are so many separations in this world? Naruto couldn't help but froze for a moment. From her words, he seemed to hear a strong sense of sadness. Is she going to leave? Thinking for a while, he patted the shoulder of the instant and said softly, there is no eternal existence in this world. When we meet, we must leave, but why can't we meet after leaving? Instant, do you mean to leave for a period of time? What? Hearing this, he turned his head and glanced at him in surprise, and sighed slightly. Naruto, you're too smart. Yes, I'm going to Paris in a few days, and my parents never asked my opinion. My feeling, because they are going to develop in Paris, they have to let me go with them. So, I will leave everyone in the future. Quote. Naruto frowned after hearing this, but he didn't expect that he had guessed it correctly, and that he had to transfer to another school just like himself, but compared to himself, he was going to Paris. He knew that once he went to Paris, he would be in a short period of time. She will never meet her friends here again. Leaving friends who have been with each other for many years, going to a strange place, no matter who will be confused and scared, right? What's more, what about a girl like that? Suddenly looking at Naruto, he said faintly, Naruto, I heard that you are also leaving Shino Academy, right? Naruto nodded slightly. A pair of beautiful eyebrows frowned slightly. Naruto, can you promise me one thing? What? Naruto was stunned. Before you leave, Don't make the world sad, okay? Besides, I also hope you can be together. Shanna said softly, raised his head. Those brown pupils stared at Naruto tightly, and the eyes in the eyes were in the moonlight. It looks very impressive. Naruto was a little surprised. Instant said, I and the world have been good friends since childhood. We grew up together, and now that she likes you so much, I really don't want her to be sad and desperate because of your leaving, so before I leave, I want to ask you to agree as my condition, okay? I will, and I can come here every week to see, but it is you who left your friend to go to a foreign country, and now you still care about the world. Who cares about yourself? Looking at this petite and exquisite girl, she is usually cold on the surface, but she has great enthusiasm for her friends in her heart, and even when she finally leaves, she is thinking of her friends. Such a girl is so distressing. Naruto has the urge to reach out and hold her in his arms. In fact, Naruto did the same. In an instant, Naruto was stunned by Naruto's words, and Naruto reached out and held her thin shoulders and hugged her into his arms. In an instant, the whole body could not help but tremble. Naruto. In an instant, if you're unhappy over there, call me, and I'll find a way to pick you up and be with everyone. Naruto said softly. Instantly stunned. Naruto patted her jade back, suddenly reached out and undid the yugi-colored bow on her head, gently let loose her long hair, and said with a smile, can you lend me this thing for a while? Moment looked at him puzzled. Naruto, what are you doing? Naruto smiled slightly, stretched out his hand, and stroked the bow a few times. A faint chakra light flashed faintly from above. In an instant, he thought he was dazzled, so he wiped his eyes and looked at him wide. Naruto smiled lightly and returned the bow to her. Okay, if you encounter any huge danger over there, bite your finger and press it on it, and the danger will naturally be relieved at that time. Originally, Naruto could quietly engrave the Hiraishin rune on her body, but because people in this world don't know chakra at all, and his current chakra is sealed, he can't remotely perceive what he has set. The spell can only be perceived by oneself by activating the runes with blood. Therefore, he had to let Instant know about this. Moment's eyes became very strange. Naruto smiled helplessly. Maybe this kind of thing is too incredible for you, but I still have to say that this is the only place I can help you. Naruto, are you saying that you can do magic? Hearing Naruto's tone, he couldn't help but ask in an instant. Naruto nodded. If you really believe me, I'll answer you, I'm not kidding. Really? Shanna was still a little unconvinced. After all, this was too incredible for her. Originally, she just asked Naruto to accompany her and talk to her. I didn't expect him to behave like this. Could it be that he really not an ordinary person, really can do magic? Well, I hope you can keep this matter a secret for me. Naruto looked at her seriously. If you don't believe it, you can pretend that I didn't say anything, but I really want to protect you, hope you understand that. She shook her body in an instant, looked up at Naruto's blue pupils, and suddenly found that there seemed to be countless mysterious things in those eyes, which she couldn't understand at all. Who is he? He, who usually looks genial and harmless, why would he do such an unbelievable thing to himself tonight? And what he said, was it just comforting himself or was it really something? She didn't know, but she knew that, no matter what, she was lost in it. Chapter 443 Entering Fuji Art Academy. With the advent of spring, the earth is gradually full of life. Naruto appeared at the gate of the academy with his bag in hand. Fuji Beauty Academy. Looking at the large characters at the gate, Naruto felt a little emotional. A few days ago, he was still in Kino City, saying goodbye to Yanyi, Otome, and the rest of the world, and he went to Paris, France a long time ago. For Naruto to leave immediately, Yanyi and the others couldn't help crying. Naruto took a lot of effort to comfort them and promised them to visit them as soon as they were on vacation. Naruto had some regrets in his heart after leaving Shino Academy, but it wasn't a big deal for him. After all, the traffic was so developed now that it would be very easy to go to Yanyi and the others, but he couldn't talk to them anymore. They just get along day and night. The new academy seemed to be bigger than Jino Academy. Naruto entered the gate and entered the academy along with the many students who had just started to report. Fujimi College is located on the border of Fujimi City, adjacent to the main city of Bedford. It is a very strictly controlled college. Its teaching is basically closed during the day. Students are only allowed to move within the school without special reasons, whether it is the college. People inside or people outside are not allowed to enter. And Naruto was sent to school here by the Mommy family because the teaching conditions here are very good, and it is an aristocratic school. Mommy also hopes that Naruto can come out of this school and improve his background. After all, in order for her and Naruto to get the consent of their parents in the future, in addition to their relationship, Naruto must have the conditions for his parents to pass the test. Although Naruto doesn't care about all this, if he is really determined to do one thing, in this modern society, it is very simple to achieve the level that everyone looks up to. However, he didn't do that, because money status was just a cloud for him, and his goal now is to live smartly and be with the women he loves. And he is constantly working on it. Tenten is cultivating the chakra in his body. Although, at his current speed, even if he has been sitting still and cultivating for hundreds of years, he may not be able to untie the chakra from the whole body, but he still did not give up hope. Yes, as long as he is still alive, he will give up. As everyone came to the registration office of the first-year department, Naruto submitted his admission letter to the staff. After reading it, the staff knew that he had transferred in, so they arranged for him to enter a class and sent someone to take him to see the head teacher. In this way, Naruto entered the school very smoothly on the first day. However, due to his weak personality, although he was known by the classmates in the class under the teacher's introduction, he still seemed very unsocial in the first few days, because he was still the same as before, sitting in the back row to sleep, but he was cultivating silently. Chakra. Of course, Naruto's current purpose is not to make friends, and he doesn't plan to fall in love with girls like he did at Jino Academy. He feels that in this modern society, Yanyi and Otom alone have taken up a lot of him. The time, coupled with the world, compared to the time when he first entered the school, the time he spent practicing chakra was nearly half less. If it continues like this and is immersed in the gentle village, how can I solve the mystery of the chakra seal? How to go back to the world of Hokage? Therefore, within a few days after the school started, Naruto was very low-key in the class. Except for a few curious girls who secretly looked at him, almost no one paid attention to him. Moreover, because it was the second semester of high school, everyone already had a circle of friends they were familiar with, and it was difficult for Naruto, who suddenly transferred, to integrate into it. With his low-key appearance, he would not integrate at all. So these days, Naruto finally enjoys the feeling of tranquility. When he was with Yanyi World and the others, he chatted and talked almost all day long. Now this academy happens to be a single seat, and Naruto sits alone in the back. No one will take care of the platoon, so he can just study chakra with his heart and study some spells. However, in quiet days, there will always be some troublesome things, although these things are troublesome in Naruto's eyes, but others are very excited. Because, the club registration activity once a semester is about to start. Compared with Jino Academy, Fujimi Academy, which is larger and more luxurious, has developed various clubs and departments, and it is almost as active as a university. Therefore, although the students who go to school here are completely closed during the day, they will not feel bored if there are various club activities in the school. In the class, the voices of discussion came again, disturbing Naruto's quietness. He couldn't help frowning while drawing some rune techniques on the paper, and heard everyone's excited discussions in his ears. Look, the leader of the Kendo Club. Isn't that the champion of last year's national Kendo competition, Dudao Yaoyu Ambi, who said that she is very good? I must report to this club. She's receiving students over there now. Let's go and see. I think the spear department is pretty good too. I like spears. Someone shouted again, and the yellow-haired senior there is so pretty. It's really nice. If I can learn with her, gun skills must be so cool. Haha, kendo, spear art is too difficult to master. I think it's better to learn taekwondo. Go and participate in taekwondo. Really, fighting and killing is not harmonious at all. I think it is better to be ordinary, so I decided to be a basketball club. As soon as the chatter came out, there were only a few people left in the classroom in an instant. Naruto, who was creating the technique, was disturbed by his train of thought, sighed, put down the pen in his hand, and got up and left his seat. He came to the rooftop on the top of the building. He looked leisurely at Shirakumo in the sky, and at the club's recruitment department surrounded by a large group of students on the playground below the building. Among them, the kendo club was surrounded by the most people. Naruto looked over from a distance and saw the general of the kendo club, who was praised by everyone, and the champion of the national competition last year. A slender figure of over 1.7 meters, with a long wooden knife at the waist, a long purple smooth hair scattered behind the head, 2 strands of hair crossed the thin shoulders casually on the chest, a strand of bangs slightly it fell in front of her pure and moving melon seed face, and her chest looked like she had a D cup. Under her slender waist, she was wearing a turquoise midi skirt, revealing her 2 slender calves. The whole person looks pure and heroic, giving people a feeling of being the first in the national kendo competition. Naruto smiled lightly and looked at the next one. Chapter 444 The Challenger. The representative of the Spearmanship Club, Miyamoto Rei. He heard this name from the group of commentators in the previous class. From a distance, she is also very cute. With long orange hair, a bumpy figure, the cups on the chest seem to be bigger than the yazi, a white school uniform, a green short skirt, and a pair of black on her slender legs. The stockings look very youthful and charming. Naruto observed for a while, and found that they were explaining the affairs of their club for the juniors and juniors. They always had a smile on their faces, causing the group of boys and girls below to let out bursts of piercing cheers. Call. It seems that no matter where they come from, cute and beautiful girls are the most popular. Naruto sighed with emotion, and after observing for a while, the class bell rang, and he left the rooftop and returned to the classroom. When the class started, the surrounding classmates were still whispering about the beauties from the kendo club and the spearmanship department. Naruto continued to lower his head and study his art. He found that with the chakra in his body, he could already complete it. Draw a detonating symbol. Detonator is equivalent to a blasting weapon in the world of Hokage. It only needs to draw a special chakra detonation technique on paper, and then detonate it with chakra. Generally speaking, making detonators is in the ninja world. It is also a kind of secret, but Naruto is Hokage, and he has been exposed to a lot of knowledge, so he can also make it with his own ability. However, in Hokage's world, this kind of spell must be drawn on specially processed paper to exert its maximum power. At this time, the detonating charm created by Naruto on ordinary paper is less than half of the original power. However, despite this, the power of Naruto's detonating charms is no less than that of some ordinary grenades today. For Naruto, if he has nothing to do, he can make a few and put them on his body, maybe it will be useful. After a class, he reluctantly drew a picture, but the poor chakra in his body was already exhausted. After lunch, Naruto passed the playground and saw that the clubs were working hard to recruit new people. At this time, all the students who had nothing to do after lunch gathered around them and listened to the introduction of these clubs. Wow, it's really amazing. I must learn kendo. Sister Yazi, can I sign up now? A boy exclaimed excitedly. Poison Island Yao Tour. I want to report too. I want to report too. Another student also shouted. Okay, take your time, please line up one by one. Yazi's gentle smile instantly fascinated a large number of boys, and even girls were fascinated by her gentleness and heroism. Naruto happened to be passing by at this time. Seeing everyone eagerly lining up to sign up, he couldn't help but smile. That classmate, do you want to sign up too? Suddenly, just as he was about to leave, Dudao Yaoyong Nayan came over. Naruto was stunned for a moment, turned his head in doubt, but saw the supervisor Yazi was smiling at him. "Are you calling me? I think it's you. If this classmate wants to sign up, please queue up. It's not a good habit to jump in the queue." Du Dao Yaoyu Acridine looked at him with a chuckle, although the words were polite, but in the tone there is an unmistakable taste. Naruto was stunned for a while, and turned to look. Only then did he realize that because there were too many people signing up, even the main road was occupied by the team. Shaking his head helplessly, Naruto smiled lightly and said, "I never thought about cutting the queue, because I didn't want to sign up, I just borrowed it." This time, it was Yazi's turn to be stunned. She smiled slightly embarrassedly. "So that's the case. I thought you also reported to the Kendo Club. I'm really sorry for misunderstanding you." "It's okay." Naruto shook his head, ready to leave. "I also have a very good impression of this girl in my heart. She is humble and gentle, but she is still imposing. She is a very good woman." At this moment, a figure suddenly ran out from not far away, and quickly rushed in front of Yazi, shouting, "Yazi, I want to duel with you." Everyone couldn't help but stare at the boy, with thick eyebrows and big eyes, tall and tall. At this time, he was wearing a black samurai uniform, with a turban tied around his head and a long wooden sword around his waist. At first glance, it was Cultivation Kendo Man. Yazi heard the voice and turned to look at the other party, shaking her head helplessly. "Silver Hall, I don't have time now, there are so many new recruits to recruit, the duel should be another day." "No, I have to fight you now. Yazi, don't you understand? I like you for a long time, and you also said that only those who beat you are qualified to pursue you. Isn't it right? Right now, while everyone is here, I must defeat you." The boy named Silvertang shouted with a determined look on his face. Du Dao Yao called out and covered his forehead with some distress. At this time, a group of students around also started to coax. The girls screamed, and the boys roared with grief and anger. "Look, everyone is looking forward to it. Yazi, how about we go to the Kendo Hall for a fight now?" Silver Hall laughed. "Senior Sister Yazi, you still want to pursue you with such a scumbag, give him some color and see." "Sister Yazi, beat him. Stomach him to death." "Sister Yazi, you are our goddess, how could this kind of guy beat you? We support you, Sister Yazi. Let him know what it means to be powerful." The boys and girls all screamed. Tang Yin smiled. Although facing the scolding of a group of Yazi fans, he didn't feel embarrassed at all. Instead, he thought that it would be a very cool thing to defeat Yazi in front of many Yazi fans. At that time, the child will surely be conquered by his own power. Thinking of this, he laughed even more arrogantly. Naruto stood aside, smiling all the time. Yazi glanced at him slightly, and a gleam flashed in his eyes. Looking at Silver Hall, she smiled faintly. "Well, in that case, I will do what you want." When she said this, her hands trembled slightly, and she couldn't help but feel a little excited. In fact, she is also very eager to fight, and now that a guy is coming to her door, how can she not be excited? Chapter 445. An accident happened. The whole thing dramatically turned into a kendo fight. A group of classmates who just wanted to join the kendo club were also aroused with enthusiasm, and they all clamored to watch the battle. Yazi suddenly smiled faintly and said, "Silver Tang, it's no problem to fight with me, but I just need to solve it here. After I've solved it, I have to recruit new people, otherwise I'm afraid I won't have enough time today." Silver Tang was stunned for a moment, and then he sneered, "Yazi, I admire a courageous woman like you. Since that's the case, let's get started." As soon as the words fell, the surrounding group of students all stepped back one after another, and a field large enough for the two of them flowed out in an instant, and the expressions on everyone's faces were extremely excited. I can finally see Senior Sister Yazi take action. This opportunity is very rare. The style of the champion of last year's national kendo competition is about to show in front of us. It's exciting to think about this. Naruto also slowly backed away, not to disturb their fight. In his eyes, modern kendo is not attractive to him. As the 6th generation of Hokage in the world of Hokage, he has come from the battle of life and death. Even if he can't use that surging chakra now, his own fighting skills and physical strength are enough to despise any martial arts in this world. Therefore, Naruto just smiled slightly at the battle between the two, without the excitement of others. Yazi glanced at him, and suddenly saw the expression on Naruto's face that was completely different from others. He frowned slightly, and suddenly said to him, "That classmate, can you please come over?" Naruto was about to leave, but he didn't want to be stopped by her again, so he turned his head and frowned slightly. "What's the matter?" Seeing the look on his face, it seems that he doesn't have the same respect and admiration for himself as other people, and the indifferent look in his eyes makes people angry. Yazi smiled slightly and said, "What's your name, classmate? Can you be a referee for us?" Naruto was stunned and said his name, Uzumaki Naruto, "But I have no research on kendo, I am afraid I will live up to your expectations." "Really? But it doesn't matter, Naruto, the rules are very simple, you only need to see who of us is defeated first, then you can stop," Yako said with a chuckle, her tone unquestionable. Having said that, Naruto can only helplessly spread his hands and stand aside. "Well then. Yazi, are you underestimating me by letting someone who doesn't know kendo be the judge?" Silver Tang said angrily. Yazi smiled lightly. "I didn't say that. Originally, we didn't need a referee in our duel. This is just what I thought about it temporarily. If you can really beat me, you don't need to care about it at all, right?" "Hee, that's good, Yazi, I'm going to defeat you here today." Silver Hall suddenly smiled, with an imperceptibly cunning look in his eyes. Naruto frowned slightly, the strange look in Silvertang's eyes had been caught by him keenly. Is this guy trying to cheat? "Hey, it seems there is a good show to watch." Naruto smiled slightly. At this time, Yazi's pair of jade hands also tightly grasped the oak-long knife, standing in front of her and looking at Silver Hall lightly. Silver Tang also held the long knife tightly and looked at her. Both of them had a special aura emitting from their bodies. Naruto was slightly surprised. He didn't expect that there were still people in modern times who could express some aura, so it seems that these two people it's not just superficial, at least he has studied kendo to a certain extent. Ah! With a deep shout, under the aura of competition, he did not have the level of a national champion at all, and he was the first to charge up because he could not fight against it. In fact, Silver Hall is the strongest person in the kendo club except for Yazi. He also won the national kendo competition last year, but it is still a little worse than Yazi, so on the one hand he is very dissatisfied with Yazi, but he also wanted to conquer this woman because of her demeanor. Of course, these are all just wishful thinking of Silverdo. Yako has never cared about this aspect. Although he and Silverdo are in the same kendo club, the relationship between the two sides is normal. Although Silver Hall had been pursuing Yazi before, Yazi kept his words to him, making him unable to approach him at all. And this time, Silver Hall actually came to challenge. Yazi was also a little strange in his heart. This guy is not as strong as himself, but he vowed to defeat him, and there must be something to rely on. Therefore, although she behaved calmly at this time, she was also very vigilant in her heart. Seeing the figure of him rushing up, Yazi took a slight step back, the long knife in his hand lightly slammed, and with a bang, Silvertang's long knife fell on her knife, and the huge force made Yazi's figure endure. Keep taking a step back. But Yazi's swordsmanship is very delicate. With a slight twist of the long sword, the opponent's strength is released backwards. Immediately, he leans forward a step and hits the opponent's abdomen with the hilt. Faced with this sudden move, Silver Tang didn't have time to change his move at all. He was hit in the abdomen immediately, and with a bang, he retreated a few steps back, his face covered in cold sweat with pain. Yazi stood up straight again, her long purple hair fluttered slightly, and the long knife held a knife flower in front of her with a faint smile. Naruto couldn't help but smile slightly. Yako's sword skills were really good, and it was already considered a very powerful level among ordinary people, and he was worthy of being a national champion. Of course, this is still nothing to Naruto. Maybe her skills are good, but her strength and speed are still at the level of ordinary people. If she also has chakra, she might be a good swordsman. Naruto thought to himself. At this moment, Silvertang was full of unwillingness after being repelled. He flew towards Yazi again and launched a series of fierce attacks on her. Yazi was skilled in swordsmanship. Although facing his stormy onslaught, however, her figure advanced and retreated in an orderly manner, and her shots were very sequential. Often, after withstanding the opponent's onslaught, each counterattack hit the opponent's body just right. After a while, she had already slashed Silvertang no less than a dozen times on her body, and there were all kinds of bruises on her arms and legs. However, Silverhall still didn't seem to admit defeat. Instead, he became more and more brave, which made everyone feel a little strange. Because the counterattacks at the back were unable to deal a blow to the opponent, except for a few attacks in front of him that could knock Silverhall away, but they were rather weak, which caught Naruto's attention, frowned slightly, and observed. After a while, he suddenly felt in his heart. Chapter 446 Rescue in the Dark. Taking a closer look at Yako's state, Naruto noticed that there was a trace of perspiration on her face for some time, and she gasped slightly. This is absolutely normal on Silverhall, but when it appears on Yako's body, it is absolutely normal. Doubtful. Naruto could see that every shot and every movement of Yazi was just right. In just a few minutes, there would never be such a state of weakness and weakness, even if she was a woman. Her physical strength she can't compare to a man, but she has practiced kendo for many years. As a national champion, she will never catch her breath against an opponent like Silverhall who is not at all strong. Moreover, Naruto could see that each of her attacks could hit Silverdo's body, but every time she seemed to be pushed back by the opponent's force, and her movements became more and more sluggish. Despicable! Yuzi suddenly screamed, and the long knife in his hand slashed at the opponent's body with all his strength, but Silvertang just raised his arm lightly at this time, and the long knife in his hand easily blocked the attack of Yuzi, and his body as soon as he moved, his long knife stabbed at Yazi's body fiercely. If this knife is stabbed, although the child will not bleed, it will definitely fly backwards. Naruto shrugged his nose when he heard Yako's angry rebuke just now, and he finally confirmed the guess in his heart. At this time, many students around didn't see any clues. They didn't know why Yazi-senpai suddenly scolded, and also didn't know that Yazi-senpai seemed very powerful at first, but now she has lost her momentum. As expected of a child. At the critical moment, Yazi's slender waist suddenly twisted, miraculously avoiding Silverhall's straight stab, and then she quickly stepped back, holding the long knife and panting. Silvertang thought that he could defeat her with one blow, but he didn't expect that after being caught in his own trap, the child would still be so fierce, and at the same time with admiration in his heart, there was also a strong possessive desire in his eyes. With such a thin waist and such a slender figure, it would be a wonderful thing to be able to hold her in his arms and press her under him. He was thinking. Damn, what the hell did you do to me? Despicable guy, Yazi gasped and said angrily. At this moment, she only felt weak for a while. This kind of situation has never happened in the previous competition. She knows that with her own strength, even facing 2 or 3 opponents like Silverhall at the same time will not feel like so exhausting at the moment. This guy definitely did something to himself. Yazi's face was calm, but his heart was secretly anxious. In this situation, if he wanted to defeat the opponent, he could only suddenly take advantage of him when he was paralyzed and careless. And in his current state, he must be infused with all his strength to defeat him completely. You son, you can't slander me in public. If I did anything to you, you should have fallen long ago, but it's me who has been beaten up until now. Could it be that your swordsmanship is inferior to others? Excuse. Silverhall laughed. The surrounding students also felt very strange, and some people began to whisper. Could it be that Yazi-senpai is really going to lose? It's impossible, she was so powerful just now. I believe that Sister Yazi will never slander others, this guy must have done something despicable. In the midst of everyone's discussion, Silver Tang laughed and rushed towards the child again. "You son, you will be defeated by my hands." "Humph!" Yazi snorted coldly, a gleam of light flashed in his eyes, and he rushed towards him with all his strength. However, at the moment when the long swords in their hands were about to confront each other, Yazi suddenly appeared in a situation. I saw that her feet softened slightly, her body was unstable, and her figure suddenly fell down. At this time, seeing the opportunity, a smug smile flashed across the corner of Silver Tang's mouth, and he turned the long knife and slashed fiercely at Yazi's shoulder. This time, it is inevitable. This time, once hit, Yazi will lose his combat effectiveness. A wry smile flashed in Yazi's eyes. She had tried her best, but helpless, her body seemed to have been poisoned. From the beginning, she gradually lost her physical strength, and then it became more and more difficult. At this time, her limbs began to become sore. She knows that this is absolutely what this guy has done. Hateful. This scumbag. If she can regain her strength at this time, she will definitely beat this guy to a cripple. However, she had no choice. She could only watch the long knife slash towards herself. The surrounding students all exclaimed in surprise. Is their sister-in-law really going to be defeated by this little-known guy? However, just when Yazi was helplessly planning to accept this result, there was a sudden wave of fluctuations in the air. Whoosh! A sound of breaking the sky rang in the ears of Yazi, and the next moment, only after hearing a cry of pain from Silver Hall, the long knife that was about to be swung in his hand suddenly slanted outside. Yazi's body couldn't help but tremble, and the next moment, she tried her best to slam the hilt into Silver Tang's chest. Click! A slight bone crack sounded, Silver Hall screamed and flew backwards, and the child was bounced back by the shocking force. Both fell to the ground. Yakko quickly stood up and looked at Silver Hall, who had collapsed on the ground and screamed in disbelief. How is this going? Just now, she thought she was going to be the first to be hit by the opponent, but unexpectedly, there was a sudden sound of breaking through the air, followed by a mistake in Silver Hall's attack. Such a mistake will never happen. Otherwise, you will not be caught by yourself with a neutral strike. Who is it? Who is secretly helping? Yazi barely stood on the spot. Although she was always calm, she was slightly dazed at this time. Silver Hall, who was lying on the ground on the opposite side, was beaten so hard by Yazi that he lost his fighting power, and the bones in his chest were shattered. With this kind of injury, he would never be able to fight again. Damn it! Which bastard is doing the trick in the dark? Let me out! He couldn't help roaring angrily when he thought that he had finally been laid out by someone else's intervention. The students who were watching didn't know why. In their eyes, the bodies of Yazi and Silver Tang suddenly collided, and then they saw both of them flying backwards and flying back, but it was Yazizenpai who stood instead of Silver Hall. That's enough. With their power of observation, they absolutely could not find the sound of breaking the air and that ordinary coin. That was the coin that Naruto fired. Chapter 447 Marikawa Shizuka. Silver Hall's conspiracy when he was in a wrong state, because he had smelled a strange smell in the air. This smell may not be felt by ordinary people, but there is chakra in his body. The Naruto, just a little touch has already identified that this smell is not right. This smell seems to have a faint effect that can paralyze the body. Although this smell has almost no effect when it floats to Naruto, he believes that Yazi must have inhaled a lot of this smell before causing it. Physically exhausted. In other words, the problem lies with Silver Hall. Perhaps he had some medicinal powder on his body, which was secretly poured out during the battle, and let the child who was fighting close to him inhale it, causing her to gradually lose her strength. Use this method to win. It's no wonder that Yakko would call him despicable. This approach is indeed against the Bushido spirit of this country. And people like Silver Hall really don't deserve to practice kendo, and they don't deserve to be the opponent of Yazi. After Naruto noticed this, he decisively helped Yakko. Fortunately, he carried a coin on his body and threw it out with the power of that chakra. After controlling his strength, he hit Silvertang's arm, causing his attacking posture to be deviated, which just happened to help Yazi relieve this time's crisis. Of course, if Naruto really used all his strength, this coin would be enough to shoot through the opponent's body. It's just that Naruto didn't want to make things bigger, and he didn't want others to know that it was him who made the move, so he suddenly shot at the moment when everyone exclaimed and was attracted by the battle between the two. In the end, Yako did not disappoint Naruto, and made a counterattack at a critical moment, successfully defeating the opponent. Yazi stood in the arena, watching everyone dance and listening to their constant cheers. Her body was a little sore and her feet became unstable. In order not to let everyone see the abnormality, Yako beckoned to Naruto and said, "Naruto, can you come over here? Is it time for the sentence to be pronounced?" Naruto smiled and stepped forward, waved his hand, and pronounced the verdict, "Poly Island Yaoi." Yako smiled slightly, and quietly reached out and grabbed Naruto's arm, and whispered, "Can you help me leave?" Naruto knew that something must have happened to her body at this time, and she did not refuse, and reached out and gently supported her soft jade arm. Yazi smiled gratefully at him, then turned around and announced to everyone calmly, "Everyone who wants to sign up can fill out the form by themselves. I have something to do now, and I have to leave for a while, sorry." After that, with the help of Naruto, the two left the playground. Silvertang fell to the ground and bit Kiba, looking fiercely at the back of the two leaving. His eyes were very unwilling. As soon as she walked out of everyone's sight, Yazi's delicate body suddenly softened, and her whole body leaned on Naruto's body. Naruto quickly reached out and wrapped her slender waist, frowning slightly. "Yazi-senpai, are you alright?" "Huh, take me to the school doctor, Naruto, please." Yazi was sweating, and it was not easy for her to hold on until now. For the sake of the Kendo Club and her own honor, she held on to keep herself from falling. Now that there was no one around and only Naruto, she finally couldn't hold on any longer. "Then, that guy has manipulated my body, and I'm all powerless now, damn it," Yako said, biting Silver Kiba tightly. Naruto nodded slightly and helped her walk towards the place where the school doctor was pointing. Although he was holding a sexy big beauty in his arms, his heart was unavoidable, but he didn't make a move. On the one hand, he didn't want to provoke more girls, so on the other hand, he would never take advantage of others at this time. Soon, under Naruto's half hug, the two came to the door of the infirmary where the school doctor was. After knocking on the door was opened after a while, and a pure and charming face suddenly appeared in front of Naruto. "Hello, classmates, do you need any help? I'm the school doctor Jushuan Shizuka. Oh, come in." She leaned down slightly and smiled. "Is that Shizuka-sensei? Yakuko-senpai's body seems to be poisoned by something, please show her." Naruto helped Yakuza walk in and put her on a stool and said, "What, poisoning?" Shizuka couldn't help but be startled when she heard this. She moved, and hurriedly stepped forward to squeeze Naruto's body away to check the condition of the child. Naruto was pushed away by her soft and plump body, and when he looked closely at her figure, he was startled. She has the same tall figure as Yazi, with long pale yellow hair that hangs down to her waist, with a knot at the end, long bangs on her forehead, and a beautiful face with melon seeds. The most important thing is not these, but the two huge mountains of meat on her chest, which are far more than the existence of D cup, E cup, and F cup. In his impression, even Tsunade in the Hokage world might not be as good. At this time, she leaned down slightly to check the appearance of the Yakuza, and just happened to hang the two mountains of meat down heavily, shaking violently with her breathing, and Naruto was even a little worried that the buttons of her white shirt won't fall off because of it. "It's too big." Naruto swallowed secretly. Moreover, the charming buttocks of the charming senior doctor wearing a black short and narrow skirt are also very upturned. At this time, they are facing Naruto, and they look like they are waiting for a man to ruthlessly penetrate and enter. Even though Naruto has decided now that he doesn't want to provoke girls from this school, he still can't resist this rare temptation. I don't know if she did it on purpose or not, but Naruto couldn't bear it anyway. He quickly turned around and glanced away to observe other things in the infirmary. At this time, after using various tools to check the child, Jushuan Shizuka finally came to a serious conclusion. She is indeed poisoned. I saw her staring at Naruto earnestly and said, "This situation is very dangerous. May I ask when did this happen to her? Or was it caused by eating something? So, I suspect that someone deliberately poisoned classmate Yazi." Naruto spread his hands and looked at Yazi. Yazi frowned slightly, and instead of answering, she asked, "Teacher Shizuka, can you tell me what kind of poison I got? Is there an antidote now?" "Oh, although this poison is very dangerous, it is not fatal. At most, it will make the limbs sore and weak," Jushuan Shizuka replied, "but this poison is definitely a poison for girls like Yazi. It's very dangerous. If there is a man with bad intentions, you will be bad, classmate Yazi." Chapter 448 Yakuza's Decision. Yako and Naruto looked at each other. A murderous look flashed in the eyes of the child. Jushuan Shizuka said again, "But it's good to see that you are all right now. I have some medicines to relieve this situation, and it should be fine after a rest. But classmate Yazi, you must be careful, there must be someone behind you who wants to attack you." Yazi nodded slightly. She took the water cup from the school doctor and ate the medicine. Only then did Jushuan Shizuka smile, then suddenly turned to look at Naruto and said, "Oh, by the way, what's this classmate's name? I don't know how to address you yet." "My name is Uzumaki Naruto." Naruto thanked him. "Thank you, Teacher Shizuka, for your help." "Hee, this is my job. It's nothing." "What a polite child," Shizuka giggled, shaking her pair of huge meat mountains that exceeded the estimate and ran to the medicine rack, fumbling again. "I found a few packets of medicine and handed them to Naruto." "Naruto classmate, these medicines can quickly recover a little physical strength. I think classmate Yazi is a little weak now. I'll give her some of this later." Naruto took it with a smile. "I am also impressed by this enthusiastic school doctor." Then, the two of them rested in the infirmary for a while, and gave Yazi some medicine, and Naruto helped her away. In the corridor, Yako, who had regained some physical strength, walked forward step by step with Naruto's support. "Naruto, thank you very much for your help this time, otherwise I'm afraid I won't be able to make it to the infirmary," Yazi said to him with a smile. Naruto shook his head slightly. "It's nothing, but I admire your ability. You can insist on defeating that guy even under the condition of poisoning." "No, it was actually impossible for me to defeat that guy at that time. It was just that someone suddenly came to help at a critical moment. Although I don't know who that person was or what method he used, I still want to thank that person. Or I will really be defeated by that despicable guy." Yako bit Kiba slightly and said. Naruto froze for a moment, pretending to be surprised. He didn't want people to know him, so even if he was only facing Yazi at the moment, he didn't tell the truth. "By the way, so, in fact, you can relax after defeating that guy at that time, why do you have to hold on?" Naruto suddenly asked. Yako couldn't help but froze for a moment, looked at Naruto and suddenly smiled and said, "To be honest, if I fell at that time, the thing that guy did to me would definitely be exposed, but Dushima Yaoyang, are not reconciled to being arrested. This kind of person is plotting, I must teach that kind of guy personally." Naruto looked at the murderous aura in her eyes, and couldn't help but be a little surprised. There was such a big murderous look in her eyes. This is definitely the look in modern people's eyes that only criminals have. This woman, kind of horrible. "Sorry, it seems that I scared you." Yako noticed Naruto's dazed look, and quickly calmed the anger in her chest, then said gently. "No, nothing." Naruto smiled. "Next time I will fight with that guy again. Then, Naruto, you must come to watch the battle." Yako suddenly looked at him and said. "Ah, why me?" Hearing this, Naruto was stunned again. "Because, you are the first man who has seen me so embarrassed." Yazi smiled slightly. "Also, I think you have an aura that I am very familiar with." If you can join the Kendo club, I will teach you Kendo in person. How about Naruto? Yako said again. Naruto was slightly startled. No way, is this guy digging a corner? She is already low-key enough, why does she still invite herself? Could it be that she can feel her own momentum? He was speechless. Wave of his hand, he said, it's better to join the Kendo club. I'll come to the duel tomorrow. That's right, then, well, I'm not forcing you. Yazi took a few steps again and was able to walk freely. The recovery medicine given by the school doctor Shizuka was really good. When Naruto saw this, he let go of her and left. He didn't want to be entangled in trivial matters in this academy again, disrupting his cultivation. Looking at the back of Naruto leaving in a hurry, a light flashed in Yako's eyes. She always felt that this man had something different, but she couldn't tell the difference, which made her very puzzled. Is your feeling wrong? Shouldn't be possible. Yazi secretly said that since the first time he saw him, he had seen an imposing manner in his eyes that was different from other people's. If he didn't practice kendo by himself, and could read the opponent's eyes in the battle, he would not have noticed his strangeness. Uzumaki Naruto, definitely not a simple guy. 3 days later, in the training grounds of the kendo club, a group of students were in high spirits. Looking at the two people in the field, they made a louder than one cry. Naruto stood in the front row of the crowd, looking at Yako holding an oak knife and sneering at the uneasy man in front of her. Silver Hall, are you ready? Accept my challenge. You son, you have already defeated me once, why are you humiliating me this time? Silver said angrily, feeling a little frightened in his heart. He knew that he had put a layer of medicinal powder on the knife that day that could make one's whole body soften. When he was fighting against Yazi, this layer of medicinal powder spread into the surrounding air with the vibration of the blade hitting, and he got close after inhaling it. The limbs will gradually feel weak and sore, and he has taken the antidote beforehand, so there is nothing to do with it. It's just, I didn't expect that he was attacked by a mysterious man at the last moment, and finally failed. In the past 2 days, he was actually very scared, worried that the mysterious person who helped Yazi would come to him to settle accounts. He didn't expect that after 3 days of waiting, there was still no news, but he heard that Yazi was going to fight with him. He originally wanted to use the excuse of being injured on his body to escape, but he didn't expect that Yazi would ignore it at all, which made him angry and scared. Standing in front of her at this time, he didn't want to fight her at all. Seeing his obvious guilty conscience, Yazi took a step forward and pointed the long knife in his hand at Silver Hall's face, his face frosty. If it's a man, accept the fight. Humph, you son, I have already conceded defeat, why are you still aggressive? However, Yazi ignored his argument at all, snorted coldly and rushed forward with a long knife in his hand. Chapter 449 Real Kendo. Hey, don't mess around, you woman. Ah! After a scream, Silver Tang's body was directly slashed by Yazi. His slightly cracked sternum was completely broken by this blow, and his body fell heavily on the ground, groaning in pain. Yazi took a step forward, nailed the wooden knife beside his face with a slam, and looked down at him coldly. Trash. You are not worthy of practicing kendo. You are not worthy of being my opponent. Senhan's tone, stern face, and sharp eyes made Silver Tang's heart feel cold when he saw it. What kind of look is this? Why does a woman have such a terrible look? An unspeakable fear rose in his heart. The surrounding students, seeing such an imposing Yazi, couldn't help cheering excitedly. In the eyes of outsiders, Yazi's performance was completely a domineering queen, which made boys and girls admired one after another, and even some boys has been deeply impressed. Naruto frowned slightly. He felt a fierce murderous aura emanating from Yazi's body just now. He couldn't help but wonder, why would an ordinary girl carry such a strong murderous aura? After Yazi finished speaking, he withdrew the long knife in his hand, gently pulled the knife flower, and smiled lightly. Several people came up and carried Silver Hall, who was killed in seconds, for treatment. A group of students rushed to surround senior sister Yazi and ask some questions, but they were forced to approach her because of the special aura of Yazi. They really could only look at it from a distance and not myopia. After watching Yako's performance, Naruto also left the kendo club with everyone. For Naruto, this was just a small farce. After watching it, he put it behind him and continued to study his own affairs. After school, Naruto returned to Mami's new home in the owner's city. Originally, Mami wanted to bring Naruto home to live in, but her parents firmly disagreed, and they still hold an attitude of disapproval of their relationship. However, they were helpless to Mami's determination, so they could only let her move out and live with him for the time being, but she was asked to go home at least once every other day, and Tenten was not allowed to stay with Naruto. Mami also agreed to this. After all, this was the biggest concession made by her parents. Anyway, it was much better than seeing each other once a week before. Daggers engraved with the Hiraishin technique while practicing chakra. These two daggers, one of which is only the length of a finger, belong to the jewelry type. He planned to make a few more and give them to Yan Yi and the others in Jino City. The other one was made by Naruto before. It was purely used to miss the days of Hokage's life and death battle. Occasionally, I would take it out and dance a few times in the uninhabited courtyard, in order not to let myself be used in taijutsu. Getting rusty is a must-do activity. On this day, after class, Naruto went to the cafeteria to eat as usual, but as soon as he entered the cafeteria, he was stopped by a voice. "Naruto, you are here, come and have dinner with me." Naruto just finished ordering, and when he turned his head, he saw Yako inviting him with a gentle smile on his face. After a slight stunned moment, he walked over and sat opposite the child. Because Yazi usually eats alone, at this moment, when everyone suddenly saw a handsome boy with blonde hair sitting in front of her, they all looked at him curiously. Naruto also noticed everyone's eyes, looked at Yazi and smiled bitterly. "It seems that I don't feel suitable for sitting here." Yazi turned his eyes, looked at the 8 trigrams of the people around him, and smiled lightly. "Don't worry about such insignificant things, Naruto, I haven't received your registration form these days. Do you really want to join the Kendo Club? I'm really looking forward to it." After she finished speaking, she looked at Naruto with a serious face, full of sincerity on her face. Naruto waved his hand, started eating casually, and responded, "Sister Yako, I really have no interest in Kendo or anything, sorry." "Ah, this is really a pity. I can see that if you have a physique like yours, if you practice Kendo, you will definitely become a good Kendo player." With the purple bangs, the white and tender jade hand picked up the chopsticks and took a bite of rice, and said helplessly. Naruto shook his head gently. "I'm a little embarrassed to say that." A gleam of light flashed in Yazi's eyes, and he really had a feeling that he couldn't see through the man in front of him. In her eyes, men in real life are irresistible to beautiful women, and it is unique to invite him to participate in such a sincere way. He would definitely join for his own sake, but he was different. Although his answer was very euphemistic, he always felt that he was rejecting something. It can be said that this is the first time that Yazi has invited a man like this, but she did not expect to be rejected many times, and it is inevitable that some dissatisfaction will arise in her heart. The next moment, she suddenly said, "Naruto, do you want to accompany me to the Kendo Museum after dinner, and let me show you the real Kendo?" Naruto really didn't understand why Yazi kept dragging her to learn Kendo. Could it be that in her eyes, she was really the kind of genius once in a century? By the way, is there really no such thing? In fact, this is not very clear to Yazi. She just feels that Naruto has a special temperament, a kind of imposing manner that suits her appetite very well. This kind of aura attracted her and made her feel that she hoped that Naruto could have the power that fits this kind of imposing manner. Therefore, Naruto was liked by Yazi like this. He wanted to keep a low profile. Even if he had already hidden his aura of killing and fighting in the world of Hokage, he had developed a natural strong aura over time. Or was noticed by a person like Yazi, who had cultivated Kendo to a very advanced level. No way, Naruto had to agree to her, otherwise it would be too inhumane. Seeing Naruto nodding, a gentle chuckle finally appeared on Yako's face, which was beyond compare. And the admirers of the many Yazi around, seeing her smiling so softly at a little-known guy, suddenly seemed to be beaten with blood, and countless vicious eyes glared at Naruto. Why, it's so hard to keep a low profile, Naruto thought helplessly. Chapter 450 Zombies are coming. Under the eyes of everyone's envy and jealousy, Naruto and Yako left the cafeteria and went to the kendo hall. Along the way, Yako explained to Naruto about kendo, and Naruto was dizzy. In fact, he has been in the Hokage world for many years, and his strength has reached the level of invincibility. His understanding of strength has long been beyond ordinary people's knowledge. Although he does not understand kendo, he has also met many ninja warriors who practice swordsmanship. The power is not ignorant either. If he were to use a sword to fight Yazi at this time, Yazi would definitely not be his opponent. In the kendo hall, Yazi was holding an oak-long knife, wearing a white school uniform and a green short skirt, with long purple hair draped behind her head. Her eyes were calm and focused, as if she was brewing something. Standing in front of her, Naruto suddenly felt a special aura coming over him. This kind of aura was something he could only feel when he faced those ninjas who used swordsmanship in the Hokage world. Although Yazi's aura is much worse than theirs, this is also very remarkable among ordinary people. Look at Naruto. Suddenly, Yazi gave a coquettish voice. Her voice was clear and penetrating, and just as she finished speaking, she suddenly rushed towards Naruto, the oak in her hand growing long. The knife suddenly drew a semicircular trajectory, and then suddenly picked it up again, and a light and shadow flashed past Naruto's nose. A gust of wind hit Naruto, blowing Naruto's blonde hair. He stood still, and stood in front of Naruto, looking at him silently. Naruto, you know kendo. Suddenly, she said lightly. Naruto was stunned for a moment, then frowned and said, Sister Yako, I really haven't learned kendo. The corner of Yazi's mouth twitched slightly, a bloodthirsty smile flashed, and a strong desire to fight appeared in his eyes. Hope. Since you don't admit it, I'll attack. Use your strength, otherwise I won't show mercy, Yazi said suddenly coldly. Naruto took a step back. She really felt helpless about her being so strong and insistent, and she felt helpless and lamented. Why would she always let herself meet this kind of girl? You will also discover your own strength. I'm going to attack. Let me see how long you can last under my hands without a weapon. Yazi's figure suddenly swayed, and a long knife in his hand instantly slashed towards Naruto. The strong wind is blowing in the face. If Naruto does not dodge, he will definitely be hit on the shoulder. Moreover, Yazi has no intention of stopping at all. Naruto frowned, and he just stood there motionless, letting her long knife slash at him. Of course, with Naruto's current physique and a strength like Yako, no matter how powerful he is, he can't hurt him. However, just as Yako's long sword was about to fall on Naruto, there was a sudden scream from the playground outside the kendo hall. What? The screams were full of fear and despair, and people could not help but be shocked when they heard it. Yako's long knife landed on Naruto's shoulder, only 3 centimeters away from reaching him. There was also a hint of doubt in her eyes, looking at Naruto. Naruto frowned. Let's go out and have a look. Yako nodded, took back the long oak sword, and walked outside the kendo hall with Naruto. On the playground, I saw a group of people standing there, as if they were watching something, but Naruto saw that the group of people seemed to have seen something terrible and were slowly backing away. Suddenly, a hoarse scream sounded in the center of the crowd, and the students who were watching fled in all directions with a bang. Their faces were full of fear and disbelief. Help! Run! Everyone was running around. Naruto and Yako looked at each other with puzzled expressions on their faces. Naruto reached out and grabbed the boy who was running away and asked, "What happened?" The boy struggled to escape from Naruto's hands, but he had no choice but to find that he really couldn't compete with Naruto's strength, so he had to say with a trembling voice, there is a dead man over there." It's biting people everywhere. Okay. Terrible. Let me go, I'm going to run. Naruto let go of him according to his words, and took the child a few steps forward. The crowd dispersed in all directions in an instant, but there were still a few people who left the last time suddenly caught by a pair of hands. Then, a head suddenly stretched out from behind the person, and he opened his mouth and bit him fiercely. On that man's neck. Kai. Blood spurted out, and the man screamed, struggling weakly with both hands, grabbing the air in front of him indiscriminately. However, in vain, half of his neck was bitten off by the guy behind him, and blood splattered everywhere. Naruto's body couldn't help but shuddered, and he couldn't help being stunned by this too abrupt scene, as did the Yakuza beside him, completely at a loss. But immediately, Naruto reacted, and the figure flashed, as if a stream of light flashed, and rushed to the front of the person in an instant, and then punched the culprit's head. Boom! The guy's head flew backwards, and his body fell heavily to the ground. Naruto quickly grabbed the body of the bitten classmate, only to find that the divine light in his eyes was slowly dimming, his neck crooked, and he died. What exactly is going on? Naruto turned his head to look at the attacker who fell to the ground, completely ignorant of all this. Suddenly, the classmate in his arms suddenly moved, and he looked down in surprise, but suddenly saw a bloody mouth biting towards his neck. Dangerous! An urgent scream came from the mouth of Yazi. She had just recovered from this scene and rushed to Naruto's side. However, she was helpless because she was too slow to stop her, so she could only watch the mouth bite towards Naruto. Suddenly, Naruto stretched out his hand and squeezed the opponent's mouth, and threw him to the ground with a loud bang. The opponent's head slammed into the floor, and a stream of blood splashed out. Naruto stood up, shook off the blood stains on his hands, and looked at another human body lying on the ground. At this time, the human body had also stood up, and suddenly rushed towards the place where Naruto was. Chapter 451 Dead Body. Naruto's blue eyes narrowed slightly, and a look of surprise flashed across his face. I saw that the skin on the surface of this person had turned into a dead gray color, the eyes on his face were slightly white, showing a terrifying light, the expression on his face had been distorted, the blue veins were bursting, and the mouth was mixed with saliva. Liquid and blood slowly dripped to the ground. And his open arms were also covered with blood from the bite just now, as well as fragments of minced meat. This kind of scene, even Naruto was taken aback. This kind of guy who seems to have climbed up from hell should not appear in this peaceful and quiet campus. At this time, looking at the figure flying up, Naruto frowned slightly, turned his body to let it go directly, and then, just as it flew past, he instantly reached out and grabbed the opponent's arms. Reverse buckle. With a bang, it fell heavily to the ground, and Naruto stomped on his head. Ooh! It uttered an unconscious howl, as if it was an ancient beast, which made people feel a terrifying feeling in their hearts. Naruto wrinkled his brows tightly, subdued it to the ground, and observed it carefully. The nails of its hands became sharp and protruding, the skin on its arms was all gray, and the flesh and blood in it was not even a trace of blood. The guy obviously has no heartbeat, but it can move. Moreover, the strength of this struggle is actually stronger than that of ordinary people. The strength is several times greater than that of ordinary people. What the hell is this guy? He was clearly human before. Why did he turn into such a terrifying guy? Even Naruto, who has always been calm, was a little confused in the face of such a sudden change. At this moment, Yako ran to Naruto's side. She glanced at the corpse that was thrown away by Naruto before, and then stared at the corpse that was subdued by Naruto. Naruto, what the hell is going on? What the hell is he? And your movements really have extraordinary power. Yazi looked shocked. Even she never expected this kind of situation. She had discussed swordsmanship and strength with Naruto before, but she didn't expect to face such a sudden thing at this moment. Also, this person who was trampled by Naruto, no, should be a monster. What the hell is going on? His eyes were completely dead, and his skin color was not that of a normal person at all. Naruto frowned tightly, let go of it, and stood up. Be careful, Yako exclaimed, the long oak knife in his hand slashed fiercely at the dead body that was about to attack Naruto. With a bang, it was split upside down and flew out in an instant. Naruto nodded to her and looked at the people around him solemnly. In just a few minutes, more than a dozen such dead bodies had appeared on the playground, and they were all chasing and rushing towards the crowds who were fleeing nearby. The students who were in a hurry fell behind and were directly grabbed by them. They opened their mouths and bit down on any fleshy places on their bodies. Blood splattered everywhere, screams rang out, and in a blink of an eye, the playground seemed to have become a Hellasura field, and the scene was terrible. Even a strong man like Naruto who came from the war felt shocked when he saw these ordinary people being tortured and bitten by them. Moreover, the most terrifying thing is not their power, but the fact that the incident itself happened too suddenly, too unpredictable, and too unknown. Unknown things always make people feel scared, and these dead bodies that are biting around, in the eyes of people who are still alive on the playground and fleeing, have become more terrifying than demons. A friend who used to be acquainted, suddenly turned into a man-eating demon at this moment. This sense of mutation and despair is absolutely unbearable for ordinary people. And the son next to Naruto was also deeply shocked by this scene. However, she did not break down and escape like ordinary people, but stood quietly, standing beside Naruto, holding the long oak knife that she usually used for training in her hand. Sister Yako, it seems that something very important has happened, Naruto said. Yeah, the dead come alive to attack the living, and the living continue to come back to life after they die. This scene is just hell. There was a slight tremor in the voice of Yazi, and I didn't know if it was fear or something else. What's the meaning? At this moment, a dead body suddenly opened its mouth and flew towards her back behind Yazi. Naruto turned his eyes slightly, and his body moved. Just as he was about to shoot, Yazi swayed fiercely for a long time. The knife slashed fiercely at the dead body behind her. Puff! The long knife hit the opponent's shoulder, but because the dead body was tall, the knife didn't directly throw the opponent away. Just when Yazi was about to withdraw the knife and attack again, the oak knife in his hand was suddenly caught by the opponent's pair of big hands. Hold tight. Then, slap it hard. Yazi let out a soft cry. Her strength could not compare to the other party at all, and her entire body was directly pulled over. She was in the air, facing the bloody mouth of the dead body. A trace of panic flashed on her face, but she calmed down immediately and was ready to take remedial measures. Seeing that she was in danger, Naruto moved, rushed forward, and threw a punch like lightning, hitting the opponent's heart fiercely. Boom! A muffled sound came, and Naruto's punch directly penetrated through its front chest and through its back, and a fine blood mist was sprayed from its back. The body of the dead body shook violently and flew backwards fiercely. Yako was rescued, fell to the ground, looked at Naruto and exclaimed, Naruto, it seems that you have practiced boxing. Naruto shook his head without saying a word, and stepped forward to look at the dead body that was knocked into the air, only to see that it moved again, opening its mouth and screaming towards Naruto. Seeing this, Yuzi frowned involuntarily. With such a heavy punch, even the heart can be directly shattered. How can this guy stand up and act? Naruto glanced at the dead body whose head was just smashed by himself not far away, and then looked at the dead body that rushed up in front of him again, slightly condensed. Sister Yazi, get out of the way. Yazi was stunned for a moment, then stepped back subconsciously. Naruto stomped, facing the dead body instead of retreating. He suddenly handed out a punch and slammed into the forehead of the dead body that was rushing towards him. Snapped. As if it was a business where a watermelon was smashed, the opponent's head was directly blown open by the punch, blood was flying all over the sky, and the opponent's body flew backwards fiercely. Chapter 452 Frenzy begins. Seeing that the human body fell to the ground and did not move, Naruto's clenched brows suddenly loosened. He looked at Yazi and said indifferently, Sister Yazi, look, these guys won't stop moving even if they get a fatal blow to their heart. They only need to destroy the opponent's head. Poison Island Yaoyu 1014. Wei Ding was also suddenly startled. She nodded and replied, "It's exactly as you said, the guy who attacked you just now is the same, and the others who were sent flying by us didn't stop." "What's the event?" "Yeah, it seems that to get rid of these guys, we must destroy their heads at present." Naruto suddenly took out the dagger with the Hiraishin spell engraved on the street stall, and tightened his grip. Hold in hand. Yazi also clenched the long oak sword in her hands, looking at Naruto's figure and suddenly smiled. "Naruto, I really didn't get it wrong. You have been hiding your power before, but now you finally show it." Naruto was speechless and shook his head. "Sister Yako, now is not the time to say this. Let's think about what to do next." Yazi smiled lightly, and a flash of excitement flashed in his eyes. "Then fight. Destroy these guys." Naruto shook his head and said, "Wait a minute, now we have to find a way to find out why these people have become like this. Otherwise, there is no way to solve the current situation." With the sound of Naruto speaking, screams continued to be heard around, and the two looked around, only to see that there were fewer and fewer living people around, and almost all those who were about to escape were surrounded by a group of dead bodies. And Naruto and Yuko are also among them. "Let's go to another place to see the situation first." Naruto pulled Yako's arm and rushed out of the crowd first, and the dead bodies flew towards the two of Naruto. The dagger in Naruto's hand waved again and again, and instantly brought up a piece of human head, and the sun was not to be outdone. When he waved the long oak knife in his hand, it aimed specifically at the head of the dead body. Bang bang bang. The cracking sound of the head continued to sound, and the dead bodies fell one by one at her feet. The remaining students, seeing how brave the two of them were, couldn't help but show hope in their eyes. However, they wanted to rush out, but they didn't have the guts, so they could only stand in place and shiver. "Follow me if you don't want to die," Naruto called out to the group of dazed guys behind him, unable to see it. Our legs are weak." The girls fell to their knees, almost unable to move, and the boys had also lost the ability to move their feet. They were surrounded by such a group of cannibalistic monsters. The whole person trembled with fright. However, there were still a few courageous men and women who rushed out and followed behind Naruto. At this time, in other parts of the playground, some people had already escaped, but I don't know what they were thinking. They ran into the teaching building one after another, and led all the dead bodies that were originally on the playground to the corridor. Middle. "Those idiots," Naruto scolded secretly. As a result, the dead bodies that should have spread from the playground would be infected into the teaching building. The students of the school were also infected. Under that kind of crowd density, there is absolutely no way to escape. "Naruto, what should we do now?" Yako asked with a stern expression. She never thought of such a mutation, but although she was afraid, she would never stop and wait for death. She would use her own strength to open up a path. "Let's guard the corridor over there." Naruto took his son and rushed directly to the corridor entrance of the teaching building, and cut off the heads of several dead bodies in front. When the blood was sprayed, Naruto stood at the corridor entrance. However, at this moment, the students in the corridor had already discovered this mutation, and those who responded quickly fled in panic. They simply ignored the dead bodies on the playground outside and wanted to escape from this terrifying academy as soon as possible. I hope that outside the academy will be the original ordinary world. Naruto and Yuko couldn't stop them at all. Moreover, among the classmates who had just rushed out of the corridor, someone had already been bitten by a dead body, and the people who turned into dead bodies once again launched an attack on the dense crowd in front of them. Looking at the increasingly chaotic scene, Naruto knew that with his current strength, he couldn't stop it. It is impossible to save these students on a large scale by destroying the dead bodies. He had no choice but to watch the chaos in front of him. Moreover, more and more people began to turn into dead bodies, and began to pounce on Naruto. Yako suddenly pulled Naruto's arm. "Come up to the roof. Naruto, sooner or later we will be swallowed up." Naruto frowned, and was dragged up the stairs by Yuko, and came to the corridor of the teaching building. At this time, a large number of students rushed out of the classroom, and there were many teachers who did not know why they wanted to maintain discipline. He was talking and drinking, still holding a textbook in his hand. There were also some students who didn't believe the facts at all, and were still sorting out their school bags, planning to be the last to leave. There are also more people standing still, or standing on the balcony of the corridor watching, staring at the scene of people eating people on the playground. That is simply the scene of the zombies descending in the movie. Many students can't help but have such thoughts in their minds. This must be a movie. This must be a dream. This mutant student, who has not yet been able to adapt to reality, is still comforting himself in such a way, trying to get a trace of spiritual comfort. It's a pity that all this is not an illusion, it is a living fact. As the first people to witness the spread of dead bodies, Naruto and Yako were already prepared. Live. This is the mood of the child at this time. Naruto, on the other hand, wanted to change the status quo and to find out the reasons for the changes in these dead bodies. Although, his idea is so naive. The campus is in complete chaos. Various withdrawal warnings are constantly sounding in the broadcast, and some comm teachers are also working hard. While calling the police, they also want to maintain order with their own strength. However, all this is now occupied by fear. It is completely useless among people of the mind. The campus has been shrouded in fear. Chapter 453 Naruto's Ability. Run. What are you still doing? I don't know who shouted loudly, and all the students who were stunned before suddenly seemed to have exploded the pot and kept running in the direction where there were no dead bodies around. On the way, I don't know how many frail students were trampled by the people behind, and then trampled by a group of people who ran away, and they were trampled to death. But at this time, no one will pay attention to whether the person under their feet is alive, whether they are friends they once knew, and everyone's heart is filled with only the desire for life and the fear of the dead. Bastard! What are you holding me for? Get out! A boy ruthlessly threw off his girlfriend, left her behind, and ran away, leaving only the girl watching with helpless eyes. The dead body came from behind. In a moment, she was drowned by the dead body, and the screams were accompanied by blood and wanted to spray out all around. People passing by had no time to pay attention, and no one would come to rescue them. In their hearts, only escape. 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 Escape this hellish school and escape this terrible nightmare. It's terrible. Standing beside Naruto, Yazi couldn't help sighing as she looked at the group of students who were in a panic. Naruto also sighed slightly. In this scene that seems to be the end of the world, how many people can bear the fear faced by human beings who are being slaughtered? Naruto couldn't help admiring her when she looked at Shiranako. After she was stunned and panicked at the beginning, she seemed to have completely calmed down. The jade hand holding the long oak knife was extremely calm, and the whole person was full of momentum. Senior Yazi, it seems that we have been blocked here. Even on the second floor, these guys are already wreaking havoc, let's go upstairs. Naruto said. The child nodded slightly. The two struggled to push through the crowd, and finally rushed to the top of the building. Along the way, they saw countless dead bodies climbing up the floor. Those students who were too late to escape, or who were left behind by their companions, could only be horrified and helpless by a group of them. The dead body is eaten in the mouth. Although Naruto was incapable of saving a large number of students, as long as he was around his classmates who were in danger, he would wield a dagger to kill the dead one by one and save those classmates. As for what would happen to them later, it was not at all within his power. Soon, the two ran up to the top of the building, and at this time, the dead body had spread to the third floor, or even the fourth floor, just one floor away from reaching the roof. Yazi shook his head and said lightly, "It seems that we have to hold on to this place and find another way to go downstairs." Well, it's very easy to go downstairs. The most important thing now is whether this kind of thing happened in other places, if it is really the case. Naruto was full of worries. If this phenomenon of resurrection of the dead, if it didn't just happen in the Fujimi Academy, but the whole city or even the whole country, what about Kotoba, the world, and Otome? And mommy must be in danger too. right? Although Naruto, as a traveler, has been to the Hokage world and read the Hokage comics, he really doesn't know anything about the things here and can only rely on the existing conditions to make judgments. Seeing the worried look on Naruto's face, Yako couldn't help but sighed slightly. Naruto, the most important thing for us now is to keep ourselves alive. Don't think about the rest. Naruto was stunned when he heard the words, and then he smiled bitterly. Although Yazi's words made sense, how could Naruto not worry about the safety of those girls? He walked to the edge of the rooftop and looked around at the current situation. He found that in just a few tens of minutes, nearly half of the population on the campus had been infected and became dead, and the number of living people was decreasing. Is this world really going to end? How did these guys come about? Is it a virus, or a bacteria? Naruto muttered to himself. At this moment, a scream suddenly came from the next floor. Naruto frowned slightly. This voice made him feel a little familiar. He looked closely. Wasn't that the medical room where the school doctor Juchuan Shizuka was located? At this time, Yazi also noticed the screaming over there, came over and frowned slightly. Mr. Shizuka is in danger. We must go and save her. Although when the dead body broke out, everyone had no time to take care of the others around them, and running away became everyone's only purpose, even if it was a former brother or girlfriend. At a critical moment, in order to survive, you can also sacrifice or pull it into the water. At this time, the ugliness of human nature is fully manifested. Naruto looked at it in admiration. Compared with war, this completely undisguised ugliness is even more chilling and terrifying. Hearing Yako's suggestion, Naruto nodded. Although they couldn't save most of them now, Shizuka, as a school doctor, also brought a lot of help to everyone, and Yako was grateful to her. Naruto knew what Yako was thinking, and he also had a good impression of the very responsible school doctor. Nodding, Naruto smiled at her. Then leave it to me, you guard the entrance to the rooftop here, give me a minute. Yazi was stunned for a moment, but saw Naruto suddenly take dozens of steps back, and then he focused on the building next to him, took a breath, and rushed forward suddenly. The next moment, I saw Naruto jumping high, drawing a long arc in midair, and landing directly on the roof of the building opposite. The two buildings were only seen, at least 10 meters apart. Yazi couldn't help but gasped, his face full of shock. How is this possible? He was able to jump over a distance of more than 10 meters and directly reach another building. Even the best long jump champion in the world can't do this kind of thing, right? Naruto's physical fitness is completely beyond that of ordinary people. Who is this guy? At this moment, when I saw Naruto, the God-given child, the shock in my heart was even greater than when I saw the dead body come. And after Naruto jumped to the opposite side, he jumped directly from the top of the building. It was a 5-story building. When Naruto's body landed on the 3rd floor, his arms suddenly rested on the windowsill. The next moment the body suddenly stopped in midair. With a whimper, the next moment, Naruto has already broken through the window. The child on the rooftop here was stunned for a while. Chapter 444 Dumb Shizuka. After breaking through the window, Naruto quickly rushed to the position where the scream came from before. At this moment, the screams over there sounded again. Don't come here. Don't come here. With incomparable horror in the voice, the speed under Naruto's feet increased again, and the figure almost turned into a gust of wind, rushing along the corridor to the corner ahead. What caught my eye was a scene of a group of dead bodies chasing a figure frantically, and what made Naruto feel ridiculous and annoyed was that the chased Juchuan Shizuka was still carrying a medical box and a bag in his hand. Yow! Looking at the way she was running, she staggered. The 2 mountains of meat in front of her chest became a burden and swayed around, and then she seemed to be shaken so hard that she couldn't stand still, so Naruto couldn't help but secretly for her pinch a sweat. At this time, Juchuan Shizuka finally saw Naruto, who suddenly rushed out of the corner. She even thought it was a dead body for the first time, so she couldn't help standing there, her mouth open slightly, it's incredible. Hey, run! Naruto had just arrived, but seeing that she was stunned there, she hurriedly shouted. Juchuan Shizuka came back to her senses, and only then did she recognize that it was the student who brought her classmate Yazi to the doctor last time. Wow, Naruto, hurry up, help me. She hurriedly stretched out her hand to Naruto's side, but the two of them were still a long way away, so she couldn't catch it at all. She leaned forward, and her feet swayed suddenly. Fell to the ground. Ouch, it hurts. She cried out in pain and wanted to stand up, but the group of dead bodies behind her had already rushed towards her. Seeing those terrifying guys with their mouths wide open, full of stench, and saliva flowing, she was stunned. Woo, you are doomed. However, at this moment, a detonating talisman was suddenly thrown out of Naruto's hand, turning into a shadow and instantly flying into the group of dead bodies behind Shizuka. The next moment, Naruto made a slight seal with one hand. Blast! Boom! With a loud explosion, the detonating talisman exploded like a grenade, and the violent flame accompanied by the shock wave violently blasted the pile of dead bodies behind Shizuka. Those dead bodies who were about to rush on Shizuka were directly blown away by the blast of the explosion. And Shizuka was almost drowned by the explosion. Fortunately, she fell to the ground on her stomach, so she was not injured. At this time, Naruto rushed in front of her, gently lifted her from the ground, and said softly, "Are you all right? Teacher Shizuka?" Shizuka seemed to be stunned by this explosion, staring at Naruto blankly, at a loss. When she came back to her senses, she suddenly exclaimed, "No, where is my medicine box?" Naruto staggered and was almost overturned by thunder, grabbed her and shouted, "Teacher Shizuka, come with me now, don't worry about that." No, as a doctor, I have to find the medicine box." Juchuan Shizuka looked at Naruto very seriously. At this time, another wave of dead bodies rushed towards them behind the two, and Naruto frowned slightly. "Sorry, Shizuka-sensei." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly wrapped his arms around Juchuan Jingxiang's slender waist. Before she could react, he picked up her white jade legs with the other hand and rushed forward. "Yeah," Shizuka exclaimed. Her body was picked up by Naruto in the air, and she hugged him tightly in the posture of a princess. She was ashamed and shocked, and her hands quickly wrapped her arms around Naruto's neck. As Naruto ran, the two huge mountains of meat on her chest shook violently, trembling, and even hit Naruto in the face due to their size. Naruto couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed at this time, but fortunately he knew that this was not the time to care about this, so he ran quickly under his feet and ran along the corridor to the rooftop. Wow, okay, so fast. Juchuan Shizuka was not only picked up by Naruto, but also experienced this flying feeling, and exclaimed again in fright. At the entrance of the stairs, Naruto saw a group of dead bodies again, sensed the approach of the two of Naruto, and rushed towards them. "Hey, dangerous over there." Shizuka struggled slightly to jump off Naruto. Naruto snorted, "Don't worry, Teacher Shizuka." Swish! A sword light flashed, and the dead bodies that had just rushed up were directly divided into two halves. Blood splashes. Naruto and Shizuka had already appeared above the stairs. Immediately afterwards, Naruto slashed a bloody path with the dagger in his hand. Fortunately, there were not many dead bodies at the entrance of the corridor at this time, and Naruto's speed was fast enough that they could not touch the corner of Naruto's clothes at all. On the roof of the 5th floor, Naruto finally ran up with Shizuka. A breeze was blowing slowly on the open roof in front of him. Naruto exhaled slightly, but did not let go of Shizuka, but went directly to the roof. At the edge, he looked at the Yakuza on the opposite rooftop. At this time, Yazi just happened to look towards Naruto. Seeing that he actually rescued the school doctor Shizuka, her face was filled with admiration. "Naruto, what should I do now? Those guys are about to rush up now." Yako shouted at Naruto across a building. Naruto saw the situation on her side, and a group of dead bodies were rushing towards the rooftop. Naruto bit Kiba slightly, bowed his head to Juchuan Shizuka and said, "Teacher Shizuka, come on my back." Shizuka was stunned. When Naruto saw her dazed look, he was a little annoyed, and dragged her directly onto his back. Hold on to me. From Naruto's tone, Shizuka finally realized that the situation was urgent. Okay. She hurriedly circled her arms and hugged Naruto's neck from behind, and the two meat mountains on her chest were directly pressed against Naruto's back. Was squeezed into an incredible arc. Naruto looked at Yako opposite and shouted loudly, "Sister Yako, jump over to me." Yazi looked slightly startled, and jumped over. At such a long distance, she is not Naruto, she is an ordinary person. It is absolutely impossible to cross a distance of more than 10 meters. And jumping from the top of the 5th floor is not courting death. But immediately, there was a flash of determination in her eyes. She put away the long oak knife, took a deep breath, and nodded towards Naruto. The next moment, she quickly rushed to the edge of the rooftop and jumped in the direction of Naruto. Chapter 455 Fall from the Sky. In mid-air, Yako's eyes are firm. She fully believes in Naruto, even if she has no ability to jump over here, but she believes that Naruto has the ability to make herself safe. This was not only because of the confidence she had after seeing Naruto's amazing jump just now, but also because of the special trust she had in Naruto in her heart. She will never regret it. Seeing that Yazi didn't even ask why, he was so convinced of himself that he jumped over here, Naruto couldn't help but move slightly. A smile appeared on his face, and the next moment, he also charged towards Yazi in midair. Jump out. In midair, Yazi's short skirt floated slightly, her two white and slender thighs were exposed in the air, and Naruto could even see the white underwear and pants under her short skirt. Next moment, the two meet in the air. Naruto stretched out his arms, and the slender waist fell into his palm, and he hugged those slender thighs tightly. A strong masculine breath came from the surface, and Yuzi couldn't help but look slightly Yuhi. She found that her whole body had been held in Naruto's arms, and Shizuka, who was behind him, fell to the ground below the 5th floor together. Yeah, Shizuka has never had such a terrible experience. Jumping from such a high place, wouldn't she fall into a meat pie? She couldn't help exclaiming in fright. On the other hand, Yazi's wonderful eyes were staring at Naruto's face, looking at his short blonde hair that fluttered slightly, and the confident look flashing in his blue eyes. His heart suddenly became calm, even if his body the bottom is an abyss, and she will never be afraid again. This is a very strange trust. From the outbreak of the dead body crisis to the present, what Naruto has shown is completely different from that of ordinary people. He is not panicked or afraid. Facing those students who have turned into dead bodies, he has to deal with it. She's so calm and composed, even she herself can't do that. And it is precisely because of Naruto's calmness that he slowly infected Yako, giving her an instant fighting spirit. At this time, the three of them fell from the sky together. Shizuka screamed, Yako smiled, and Naruto's expression was calm and composed, without any panic. His body flew over the wall on the 3rd floor opposite, and suddenly, his feet were slightly propped up on the wall, and the only trace of chakra in his body was emitted from the soles of his feet and firmly attached to the wall. The next moment, chakra loosened, and the three continued to fall. With a loud bang, Naruto and the three girls fell heavily onto the lawn at the bottom of the building. Shizuka's arms loosened, and an unstable body suddenly fell off Naruto, and fell to the ground with a thud, making her groan in pain. Yako gently descended from Naruto's arms and looked at Naruto in astonishment, as if he was meeting him for the first time. Naruto, you surprised me. Jumped down from the top of the 5th floor with the two of us, and landed so safely. Are you a Superman? She was deeply shocked. Naruto smiled lightly, but did not answer. Turning her head to look at Shizuka, who was lying on the ground and screaming in pain, she couldn't help but be speechless. She saw her high buttocks were facing her, and a jade hand was still rubbing constantly on it. There was a trace of tears in his big eyes, and he kept humming, it hurts, it really hurts. The chest and buttocks are like flowers. This woman is too tempting and tempting. Naruto stepped forward to help her up. Shizuka might be pinned to her ankles, her body could not stand still at all, and she fell into Naruto's arms all at once. The pair of huge jades on her chest almost burst out of her breasts. She put a jade hand on her chest and rubbed lightly. "My foot seems to be sprained too." Naruto swallowed secretly, and hurriedly handed her over to Yazi. "Sister Yazi, please help Mr. Shizuka to check it. After the check, we must leave here immediately." He looked around, not knowing. There are dead bodies in the distance who have heard the movement here and are rushing towards here. Teacher Shizuka's foot is twisted a little, but it should be fine for a rest, but now she may not be able to move. Yazi's tone was helpless. At this time, a scream came from not far away. The three of them looked over there, and saw that a boy pushed the girl beside him fiercely towards a group of dead bodies behind him, and then he ran wildly, so that the girl could delay him for a while. "No, you bastard!" Ah! The girl's neck was bitten off, her voice got stuck in her throat, blood flew out, and she fell down. Seeing such a scene, Shizuka couldn't help but tremble, looked up, and looked at Naruto helplessly. In such a situation where there is nowhere to run, and her own feet are inconvenient, if Naruto leaves her, she will definitely die here. Naruto smiled slightly, reached out and pulled Jutsu on Shizuka. "Come up, I'll carry you." Shizuka couldn't help trembling all over, looking at Naruto's eyes with incomparable surprise and emotion. He didn't abandon himself, he won't abandon himself. He is willing to carry himself. Ah, Naruto. The next moment, she rushed towards Naruto tightly, hugging his neck tightly, the pair of huge breasts on her chest pressed against Naruto's chest, her tone slightly choked up. "Cough cough." The child on the side suddenly coughed lightly and said lightly, "Come on, don't linger, let's get out of here quickly." Naruto was a little breathless under the pressure of Shizuka's big breasts, and when he heard the voice of the child, he came back to his senses, put Shizuka on his back, and nodded with a dagger in his hand. "Let's go to a temporary safe place first, and then make plans for the next step," Yazi said with an oak-long knife. Shizuka leaned on Naruto's back and stared at the two with those big eyes. At this time, the surrounding dead bodies have also approached this side, unfolding their hideous posture, and crushing them all the way. Naruto and Yako looked at each other, picked up the weapon in their hand and rushed forward. At this time, outside the campus, a bus suddenly stopped at the entrance of Fujimi College. The door opened, the four girls hurriedly jumped out of the car, the door closed immediately, and they walked away. These four girls are precisely in the world of Sayuanji in Jino City, Katsura Yanye, Katsura, and Kato Otome. They made an appointment to see Naruto just after school today, but unexpectedly, when they were in the car, they suddenly saw various scenes of people biting and eating people on the surrounding streets, and everyone in the car was stunned. Living. The four girls were also completely at a loss, and it took a while before they recovered. After discussing for a while, they all said they would get out of the car and find Naruto to confirm his safety. Chapter 456 Sudden Death. However, at this time, they are still a little difficult to adapt, because there is no dead body in the car, and no one is infected, so it is relatively safe. Although they are very afraid of the outside world, they have no courage at all. Consider how to get out of the car and deal with these crises in front of you. When they begged the driver to stop and go out, some infected dead bodies next to the school moved towards them one after another. The four girls were shivering with fright. Facing the hideous and terrifying monster, they truly felt what it was like to be afraid. When they faced this danger, they finally realized what it meant to be powerless. However, they were not the kind of people who were too frightened to move. After a short period of fear, a strong urge to see Naruto rose in their hearts. "Even if I die, I have to see Naruto again," Yanyi said suddenly and firmly. "Yes, since we got off the bus, we can't be afraid anymore." The world suddenly picked up a fallen iron railing on the ground and held it tightly in his hand. Gui Shin was so frightened that she tightly grabbed the corner of her sister's clothes, her legs trembled slightly. She was usually bold and cheerful, but at this moment she was stunned. Yanyi held her sister's palm and gave her silent comfort. The three of them leaned towards the world and ran into the Fujimi Academy with the school gate wide open. At this moment, they can only enter. Not back. Because there is no way back. Naruto didn't know that Yanyi and the others happened to come to Fujimi Academy so coincidentally. He was still worried about their comfort, and the ornamental dagger engraved with the Hiraishin technique on his body had no chance to send it. At this time, he was rushing to kill with the two of them. Although there were a lot of dead bodies around, and the living classmates were running around in panic, those students only knew how to run away at this time and did not dare to deal with them. As a result, they could only be surrounded by countless dead bodies and became the minced meat in their mouths. Naruto and Yako rushed out of the siege of dead bodies. Under Naruto's dagger, almost no dead bodies could approach them. Although the chakra in his body can't be used at this time, with only his own physical strength, he will never be in danger of being surrounded by dead bodies. If he wants, he can even kill a few times in the campus. But he didn't do that, because the only thing he had to do now was to rush out of the Fujimi Academy and confirm the safety of Yanyi and the others. Therefore, in order to go to Jino City smoothly, he must find a car. After he told Yazi and Shizuka about this idea, Shizuka suddenly screamed, "Naruto, if it's a car, I can drive it. But my car is parked far away, and I don't think it's too big to pass from here. Possibly, let's go to the repair shop and have a look. It's much closer to here, there should be some cars that can be used." "Okay, then go to the repair shop." Naruto nodded, followed the direction Shizuka pointed, and rushed over with the two of them. At this time, after a huge panic, many people also began to fight back and flee in an orderly manner, instead of fleeing aimlessly as before. Those who survived have gradually adapted to this environment full of dead bodies, and they all clenched their weapons in their hands. In the building next to Naruto and Yako, a girl with long soft pink hair was running away with a short, chubby boy. The girl had double ponytails and slightly raised bangs on her forehead. The chest is also very predictable, even if it is a few sizes larger than that of the child. When running, her two long ponytails and the two meat mountains on her chest also swayed back and forth very regularly. However, the girl's face was full of panic that could not be concealed, and it was obvious that she had not completely overcome the fear in her heart and could not face the reality. And the fat boy who ran away with her, with black-framed eyes, was trembling all over when he ran, but he lost his strength after just running a few steps, and stopped in place and kept breathing. "Toda, if you continue like this, you will definitely become one of them. Do you really want to die?" the girl snapped. I really can't run." Toda gasped, looking at the girl in front of him and shouting, "Shay, don't leave me." "Humph. You usually lack exercise yourself, and you are so fat that you can't even run now. If it goes on like this, I really don't care about you." Gaochung Saya shouted coldly. "Okay, I'll be able to run right away." Toda was startled when he heard this, and with some strength, he ran forward again. And behind them, a group of dead bodies are also chasing quickly. "Should we find some weapons first?" Toda yelled. "There is an activity room over the corner, and there may be something in it," Gao Cheng Saya said. Toda's eyes lit up, and the speed under his feet became much faster. "Then let's go over there," he shouted and rushed over there first. The moment he just turned, a dead body suddenly jumped out of the corner, opened his mouth wide and bit Toda's shoulder fiercely. "What?" A scream sounded, and he collided with the dead body, full of him. With a miserable cry in his mouth, his eyes looked in the direction of Gaochung Saya in despair. "Toda!" Shay exclaimed, his pupils suddenly dilated, a pair of jade hands tightly clasped his mouth, his face full of horror. "How can it be? Why is this happening?" The companion who escaped with him a moment ago, the guy who was so alive and talking to him a moment ago, was bitten on the shoulder and neck by the dead body at this moment. Seeing the look of despair and unwillingness in his eyes, Shay was incomparably frightened. How could human life be so fragile? In front of these dead bodies, even if you don't even finish a word, you will lose your life immediately, and the corner ahead may be the end of your life. "Why? What is all this for? With her genius mind, she has completely lost her normal thinking ability at this moment. But, as a genius, she knew she had to be better than everyone else. She has to outlive the others in this disaster. At this moment, she suddenly woke up. She knew that she should face all this more calmly, and she must use more rational thinking to deal with the crisis. In front of Toda, the divine light in his eyes is slowly dissipating, and his face still carries the nostalgia for life and the fear of death. But she must not be brought into this kind of fear because of this. She must live. Chapter 457 Takasung Saya. There was no way out behind him, and Toda in front of him was being bitten by a group of dead bodies, blood spattering frantically. When Shay was terrified, the desire to survive and hope also burst forth. She didn't know where the strength came from, and she suddenly exerted strength under her feet and ran out to the side. As for Toda, he was completely dead at this time. His body was torn apart by the bite. Maybe there was the last glimmer of light in his eyes to see Saya's back. I can't die. I can't die, Saya murmured to himself as he ran. She didn't run away in random order, but focused on the positions of the dead bodies in front of her, avoiding them as far as possible, and ran towards other places where there were few dead bodies. Soon, he ran out of the building, but he saw more and more frantic dead bodies on the playground, densely scattered throughout the campus. She couldn't help being frightened. With so many dead bodies, I can't escape at all. Although these guys don't run fast, once they are caught, they will definitely not be able to survive. Looking at the surging dead body in front of him, Saya Gaocheng couldn't help but look desperate. Mom and Dad, am I really going to die here? Suddenly, just when she was extremely desperate, two figures suddenly rushed out beside her. One purple hair, one blonde. Gaocheng Saya's eyes couldn't help but burst into ecstasy. Hey, you guys help me, she opened her mouth and shouted at the two of them. These two were Naruto and Yako who had just arrived here, and when they heard Saya's cry for help, they couldn't help but look at her. At this time, a group of dead bodies rushed towards her behind Saya. She was startled, bit Silver Kiba slightly, and couldn't care about it anymore, and rushed towards the direction of Naruto and the two in one breath. However, although the distance between her and the two was not too far, it was only 20 to 30 meters, but there were more than a dozen dead bodies between them, and Saya would never be able to reach Naruto and Yako safely. Naruto and Yako looked at each other. At this time, Saya had already encountered the first danger. A dead body noticed that she was coming in front of her, and immediately opened her arms and raised her mouth to pounce on her. Saya exclaimed, threw herself to the side, and finally escaped its attack in a thrilling way, and then she kept running towards Naruto and the two of them. However, in the end, she was just a weak girl. After she escaped a dead body for the first time, there were more and more dead bodies, and she was surrounded by almost all directions. She immediately froze in place, looking helpless and desperate. But at this moment, Naruto and Yako suddenly rushed to her side. Yako pulled her up. Come with me. Shay was stunned for a moment, and was led by the scorpion and flew forward, and the dead bodies along the way were slashed back by him. And Naruto stopped behind them, swinging the dagger at will, cutting all the dead bodies that tried to catch up in half. Shizuka on Naruto's back was also stunned by the powerful force of Naruto and Yako. She had never thought that a human could jump off the 5th floor and be unscathed, and she had never thought about them. To be able to fight all the way without fear of these terrifying guys. Especially Naruto, she was on Naruto's back, and she deeply realized his strength. With him on his back, not only did the speed of his feet not slow down at all, but his shot was almost unstoppable. It was even more amazing. Yes, she could actually feel very stable on his back. Moreover, after fighting until now, there is no sweat on Naruto's face at all. There is no sign of rapid gasping in the mouth. What the hell did he do? Ordinary people will be tired even if they run here alone, right? And when he was carrying himself and fighting the dead body, he was able to be so calm. Simply unimaginable. Shay was held back by the scorpion, and when she saw the scene where her hands fell, and the dead bodies retreated, a deep envy rose in her heart. At a time like this, she found that her genius mind was completely useless. The four of them shuttled between a group of dead bodies. After Naruto cut off the dead bodies behind, they quickly caught up with Yako and Saya, and rushed to the car repair shop in front of them. Under the protection of Naruto and Yako, the three of them successfully rushed to the repair shop, and there were very few dead bodies there. After the three of them rushed in, they were finally safe for the time being. Shay finally let out a long sigh of relief. When she got here, she suddenly felt a sense of escaping death. Only then did she realize that although she was a genius, she was not able to face everything calmly. In this life and death contest, the only test is courage and strength. Naruto put down the school doctor Shizuka on her back. She tried to walk a few steps, and her slightly twisted feet were now able to walk freely. Reaching out and patted the high bulging chest in front of him, the two high bulging hills waved slightly. "It's so dangerous. I almost got bitten to death. Naruto, Yako, it's all thanks to you guys," Shizuka said with a long breath, looking at Naruto and Yako. Gaochung Saya also came back to her senses at this time. She was saved and looked at Yuko's and Naruto with gratitude. They fought all the way to bring her here. She, who has no strength, can only rely on them to survive. "Thank you so much for saving my life. My name is Saya Takajo. I'm a sophomore in high school." She stepped forward and introduced herself. Naruto shook his head slightly and sighed. "I am Uzumaki Naruto, a first-year transfer student." "There is no need to say thank you. There are fewer and fewer people alive, and it is also a kind of fate for us to be together." Yazi nodded. "I am Poison Island Yaoing." Naruto is right. I guess it may be the same situation not only in our academy, but also in other places. What we are facing now will be the end of the world. Scene, it is not easy to live one more person. Quote. After listening to Yako's words, Naruto frowned slightly, and his worries became even heavier. Under such circumstances, wouldn't the Yanyi and the others in Jino City have no way out at all? Moreover, from just now until now, many people have called the police, but none of the police have arrived, which can only mean that they have encountered the same trouble, that is to say, now they can only rely on themselves. Saying so, Yanyi and the others. Thinking of this, Naruto couldn't calm down, looked at the owner of the auto repair shop and said, "We need a running car to escape from here." Chapter 458. 4 women get in the car. "I happen to have a car here. It's still a big school bus that's being repaired, and it's just finished." The owner of the car repair shop said boldly, "You can take it. It's so messy now, as many people can escape as many people can escape." "Yeah, thank you." Naruto nodded and followed the direction pointed by the owner of the auto repair shop. He saw a normal-sized bus, which happened to be the school bus usually used by Fujimi College to carry students. "See you." Arriving at this big guy, everyone's eyes couldn't help showing a trace of excitement. Gaochung Saya couldn't help laughing and said, "That's great, so we can rush out of the academy directly." "Yeah, I've been fighting and killing. Those guys will never be able to kill them." Yazi nodded slightly. "Well, but the key question is who will drive." "I can't drive." Her gaze turned to Takasago Saya. Saya's face couldn't help but Yuhi. "Me, I won't either." As a genius, she felt very embarrassed when she said such useless words. As a genius, she couldn't even do things like driving at a critical moment. "Hee, have you forgotten that there is an adult here?" At this time, Shizuka, who was beside her, walked to the car with her huge breasts. "You students who don't have a driver's license can't do it." "Right, I've never driven a car like this, but I think I should give it a try." Naruto nodded. "Then let's go." After speaking, he got into the car first. Several other people also got into the car, but the owner of the car repair shop still stayed and insisted on not leaving. Seeing his firm and full of confidence, everyone did not persuade him. Maybe he had a way to get out. So, the four got into the car, with Shizuka serving as the driver. The car started and rushed out of the shop with a bang. "Wow, I'm not used to this car. The school Dr. Shizuka exclaimed, driving the car to the left and right, rushing out of the shop and then to the playground. Seeing the dead body in front of her, she always had the feeling that she didn't dare to hit it. Bump over. At this time, Naruto said coldly. Shizuka couldn't help but be stunned. She knew that these dead bodies in front of her had lost their original human minds and became walking corpses, but seeing their familiar clothes and the vaguely remaining students on their faces, she couldn't bear it for a while. Hurry up. Don't hesitate any longer. Naruto patted her on the shoulder, and Shizuka's body shook violently. I understood. She bit Kiba, stepped on the accelerator, and slammed into the dead bodies in front of her while holding the steering wheel. Bang bang bang. The dead bodies were instantly smashed out by the car body, and a piece of blood and flesh flew across. A sudden braking, the steering wheel spun sharply, the whole car drifted again in an instant, and once again smashed a group of dead bodies from the side, and drove quickly towards the front. At this time, at the gate of the campus, the four of Yanyi were surrounded by a group of dead bodies. They managed to avoid a group of dead bodies just now, and they were chased by a group of dead bodies just a few steps into the campus. Weapons have successfully blocked some dead bodies a few times. I am afraid they have already been torn to pieces. However, even in such a dangerous and desperate situation, they still maintained a strong desire to find Naruto in their hearts, because it was this desire that has kept them alive until now. What should I do? There are more and more of these guys. We can't get out. Yanyi asked the world around him, his tone trembling. The world held the iron rod tightly in his hands, staring at the group of dead bodies in front of him, biting Silver Kiba tightly. We must not give up. As long as it is not until the last minute, we have hope. At this moment, a bus suddenly rushed in front, and the bus frantically knocked away countless dead bodies next to it, rushing towards where they were. What is that? Otome exclaimed. It seems that someone is driving a car towards us. Is it here to save us? Gui Shin's face showed a glimmer of hope. Kai. As they wished, the bus really stopped in front of them. The door opened, and a familiar figure jumped out of the car. Naruto. The four Yanyi exclaimed in unison, and their eyes couldn't help showing ecstasy. That's great. You guys are here too. Hurry up and get in the car. After Naruto jumped off, he came beside them with a face full of surprises. He thought that Yanyi and the others would be in an extremely dangerous situation in Jino City, but he didn't expect them to appear in Fujimi Academy. This surprised and delighted him, and at the same time there was a strong feeling of rejoicing in his heart. Yeah, the four women also knew that the situation was critical now, and the dead bodies around were all attracted by the movement here, and they rushed towards this side. All topics are left for safety later. Thinking of this, they quickly got into the car under the protection of Naruto. Naruto quickly knocked up all the dead bodies that wanted to get close, and let them get on the car safely. At this moment, the four girls had just finished getting into the car, and suddenly there were several calls for help not far from the car. Wait a minute, please wait a moment. I saw a boy and a girl rushing towards this side quickly. Naruto took a closer look and saw that the girl was a little familiar, with long orange hair and two long dull hairs on her head, wearing a school uniform and holding a long iron rod in her hand. She seemed to be the last time she saw her. The girl from the gun department. The other boy, who also looked very handsome, was holding a baseball bat in his hand, and was slapping the dead body near him. Both of them are amazing, and their performances are extraordinarily brave. Let them come up, Yako demanded. Naruto nodded. With his strength, he could not be afraid of the threat of dead bodies. So since he had a bus here, he could save as many people as he could. After all, in this world full of dead bodies, there were more and more living people. The less, every living person will be a force of confrontation in the future. Come up, Naruto shouted, and the next moment, his body flew towards the direction where the dead bodies were the most dense. Yanyi and a few women who had just got into the car covered their mouths in fright when they saw this scene. No, Naruto, dangerous! Yanyi exclaimed and shouted towards Naruto outside the window, his face full of horror. The world also held the iron railing in his hand and planned to rush out of the car again. Fortunately, there was a child in the car who pulled them one by one, which stopped their impulse. Chapter 459 Besieged. They didn't know that Naruto had such a powerful force before. Even Yanyi had seen some before, but she only thought that Naruto was more capable of fighting. In the face of so many terrifying guys, how could it be possible to use a normal person's body to resist? Therefore, at this moment, Yanyi and the others' hearts had already reached their throats. However, Naruto faced the group of dead bodies flying over at this time, and after clenching the dagger in his hand, a long-lost smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. The pleasure brought. This is a kind of pleasure that can sway the power freely. Come on. Naruto let out a low voice, leaning forward slightly, the dagger in his hand lying across his chest, and a faint light flashed in his clear blue eyes. The next moment, I saw a sudden kick under his feet, and a great force burst out in an instant. At the same time, a powerful recoil force was instantly released, and Naruto's body seemed to have turned into a streamer, and suddenly rushed behind the group of dead bodies at a dazzling speed. During this period, no one could see Naruto's trajectory and any movements in his hands. Yazi and the others in the carriage widened their eyes in disbelief, staring at Naruto's back. The expression on their faces was beyond shocking. How did you do it? Yazi whispered. With her years of experience in kendo practice, she couldn't see the trajectory of Naruto's movement, she only knew that this speed was it's not something normal people can have. No matter how ingenious the move, no matter how unthinkable, it must not cross a distance of more than 10 meters in less than a second and appear behind the group of dead bodies. Naruto slowly put down his dagger. At this moment, the bodies of the dead bodies behind him suddenly shot out a stream of fresh yuhi blood from their necks. The next moment, the heads of more than 10 dead bodies fell from their necks. Come down, Chi-Chi fell to the ground. Bang bang bang. After a dozen muffled noises, these dead bodies all fell to the ground. Instant kill. Naruto let out a slight sigh. Although the chakra in his body could not be used, his physical strength alone was enough to make some killing moves. In the face of these dead bodies whose reaction and speed are not as good as ordinary people, he is a one-sided slaughter here. At this time, the boy and the girl had already rushed to Naruto's side, and both of them were stunned when they saw that Naruto had killed a group of dead bodies in a single second. Hurry up and get in the car. Naruto shouted. The two of them reacted and rushed into the car. At this moment, the movement here also attracted the attention of those who were running around on the playground. They saw that there was a car on Naruto's side that was accepting the entry of living people, and they couldn't help but rush towards it. This is their only hope of survival. Naruto knew that there were still a lot of vacancies in the car, so when the two got into the car, they didn't go back immediately, but continued to fight with the dead bodies, and finally bought some time for those who still had hope to escape here. Boarding. Among them, Shido Koichi also took the lead in rushing into the bus. At this time, the surrounding dead bodies also flocked to the bus because of the attraction of the fleeing students. Naruto, there's not much time left. Come back quickly. If these guys surround the car, we won't be able to leave. Yako shouted towards Naruto outside. Naruto bit Kiba, looked around, and saw a group of dead bodies swarming around, occupying almost half of the playground, no less than 1,000 people. At this time, those students who were close to here also got on the bus one after another. Seeing this scene, Naruto retreated. However, at this time, since he was already some distance away from the bus, he was surrounded by a group of dead bodies in front of him and behind him, and there was no way out. Naruto. The expression on Yazi's face was slightly anxious, and he was about to get out of the car with an oak-long knife to help him cut a path. You go first, don't worry about me, I'll catch up in no time. Naruto shouted at them. At this time, the classmates who had already boarded the car also found their seats and sat down. They saw the figure outside the car fighting alone with the dead body, with different expressions on their faces. When the admirers saw Naruto being surrounded by one person, they all had the urge to rush out of the car, while others were more concerned about their own safety. Said that only his own life is the most important thing, such as Koichi Shido, who got in the car, a teacher at Fujimi College. He was wearing a pair of short-sighted glasses, with a thin body and a handsome face, but from time to time a trace of indifference and cruel eyes flashed in his eyes. Seeing Naruto fighting the dead body, he took another look at the students under his eyes and said loudly, "I suggest driving now, otherwise everyone will be unable to leave. That classmate is very heroic, everyone should believe him." Soon as he finished speaking, the orange long-haired girl who got into the car first suddenly said sharply, "Bastard. He protected us with his own strength, how can we leave him behind?" Hearing the objection, Zitohiro turned to look at the girl, a ruthless look flashed in his eyes, but he smiled lightly. "This classmate, I'm the teacher of the school, it's an adult, I made the decision. Much more correct than you immature children. And as the heroic classmate said, we should go first, so as to save more lives." The students in the car nodded one after another, and they all agreed with what the teacher said. The girl Miyamoto Rei wanted to say more, but was stopped by Komuro Takaya. "This is not the time to argue with him, Rei." Miyamoto Lee couldn't help frowning. "Xiaoxi, when did you become so weak? That classmate is in great danger at this time, how can we ignore him?" The boy, Xiao, sighed slightly. "Lee, although I really want to save him, the current situation really doesn't allow us to wait any longer." "Humph, why do you even do this?" Miyamoto Rei yelled and pushed him away fiercely. At this time, Naruto, who was surrounded by the dead group, saw that the car hadn't started for a long time, and he couldn't help feeling a little anxious. Although they had been waiting for themselves, they moved their hearts, but if they didn't leave, they would really not be able to leave. There were more and more dead bodies around, and they were getting closer and closer. Shizuka, who was driving, bit Kiba slightly, stepped on the accelerator under her feet fiercely, and rushed towards Naruto's crazy. Chapter 460 Debate. In this case, the car is simply driving into the abyss of death, because Naruto's side is almost full of dead bodies, and there is absolutely no way to turn back when rushing in, and it will almost be a dead end. However, just when Naruto thought that the car would crash directly into it, Shizuka suddenly turned the steering wheel in her hand, and stepped on the brake at the same time. Chi-chi. A sharp screeching sound of friction sounded, and the main bus suddenly drifted with a beautiful tail, knocking over a large pile of dead bodies in front of Naruto, and stopped in front of Naruto. "Come up, Naruto!" Yazi, Yanyi and others in the car couldn't help shouting in unison. Naruto couldn't help but smiled slightly. His body suddenly jumped high, his feet stomped on the forehead of a dead body, and the whole person rose 1 meter again, and leapt towards the top of the bus. And the dead bodies under their feet stretched their arms in the air, unable to touch Naruto's body at all. Everyone in the car opened their mouths in unbelievable expressions. "Good job," Yazi couldn't help but praised. Boom. The next moment, Naruto stepped heavily on the top of the bus, supported it with one hand, smiled, and shouted, "Go with all your strength." Boom. Slam the accelerator. The school doctor Shizuka drove the bus towards the campus gate and rushed out. Naruto squatted on the top of the car. He couldn't help letting out a small breath, his blonde hair fluttered in the wind. The car drove on the road and headed towards the suburban road, and the dead bodies on the road were very few, and their car finally evacuated from the dangerous area. Yako opened the window, and Naruto flipped in directly from the roof and fell into the car. Call. The next moment, the 4 daughters rushed towards Naruto's arms and threw themselves on his chest. Naruto, Yanyi, the world and Otome entered Naruto's arms together, knocking Naruto into the seat at once, and even Guishin rushed over to join in the fun. "Brother Naruto, you were amazing just now," she exclaimed excitedly, her white and pretty eyes flashing with adoration. "Yeah, I'm almost scared to death. It turns out that you are so powerful, Naruto, that you are almost flying." Otome also exclaimed excitedly. At this time, Yako and the others were looking at Naruto surrounded by a group of girls with surprise. Their eyes were full of surprise. Naruto smiled awkwardly and introduced to everyone. These are my classmates before I transferred to Fujimi College. This is Gui Yanye, and her sister Gui Shin. This is the world of Shuon Temple. There is Kato Otome. Naruto introduced Yako, Takajo Saya, and Kamuro Takaya one by one. Yazi's smile is very strange. Naruto, what a coincidence you are. These girls are all here to find you. Oh, yes. Naruto touched his nose. After that, Yako, Saya, Kamuro Taka, Miyamoto Rei, all introduced themselves one by one, so that Yanyi and the others all got to know each other. After the introduction, everyone focused their attention on Naruto, and their eyes were full of eagerness. Because of the force Naruto showed before, it definitely belongs to the master level that only exists in the movie. At this moment, in everyone's mind, he has become a super master. Miyamoto Rei suddenly came to Naruto and gave her a deep salute. Naruto classmate, thank you very much for protecting us on the bus. Thank you. Naruto smiled lightly, shaking his head slightly to signal that you're welcome. At this moment, Wisteria suddenly walked towards Naruto with a smile and stretched out his hand to him. Hello, this classmate, what you did just now was very brave. As a teacher, I have to give a good compliment. You, come on, let's get to know you. My name is Koichi Shido, I'm a teacher at Fujimi Academy, so you can just call me Teacher Shido in the future. Naruto stretched out his hand, shook him lightly, and nodded slightly. A satisfied smile appeared on Wisteria's face. At this moment, Miyamoto Rei suddenly rushed over and slapped it on the palm held by Wisteria and Naruto. With a crisp sound, Zito Hiroshi let go of his hand and looked at Miyamoto Rei. You bastard! You are not allowed to approach classmate Naruto. Miyamoto Rei suddenly said coldly. This classmate, what are you doing? Shido Koichi actually recognized Miyamoto Rei, but he still pretended not to know. Don't ask me knowingly, get your dirty hands off. I didn't expect someone like you to be in the car. Disgusting. Miyamoto Rei yelled angrily. Naruto frowned slightly. He didn't know the grievance between Koichi Zito and Rei Miyamoto, and he didn't know Koichi Zito's character. For him, the people in the car were other than Shizuka and Yanyi's 4 daughters. Besides, everyone else is a stranger. Seeing them quarreling, Naruto frowned slightly and said, personal grievances and grievances will be put aside first, now we have to consider other issues. Hearing Naruto's words, Miyamoto Rei was silent for a while. Shido Koichi laughed and said, sure enough, this classmate Naruto is sensible. I like people like you. He stepped forward and seemed to know Naruto very well, and his eyes were also very provocative. Staring at Miyamoto Rei. Miyamoto Rei thought that Naruto was bewitched by this guy, so she couldn't help being very angry, frowning and staring at the two and stopped talking. At this moment, Shizuka, who had been driving all the time, suddenly asked, Naruto, if we go further ahead, we will reach the bed owner city. I'm afraid there will be more dangers over there. Where should we go now? Everyone could not help but be silent. Yes, it is possible that now the whole country has fallen into this situation, and there are almost not many people alive. What should the living people do? And when Naruto heard this question, he couldn't help being slightly shocked. The next moment, he decisively ordered, go to the Bedmaster City. What? Everyone couldn't help being surprised. In everyone's mind, the safest thing to do now is to find a place with as few people as possible to plan for the future, but he actually said that he was going to the bed owner city. Isn't that going to those monster piles? No, we don't. Some students shouted in horror, all looking at Naruto, even Yanyi Zizi and others looked at him in confusion. Che analyzed, I think now that even the police can't protect themselves, we can only survive on our own, and what we have to do now is to find enough opportunities to survive. Instead of going so dangerous the place.